Hey, everybody, what's going on? James from My Take on Reality, and
Jenny from Senior Perspective.
there you go, coming in for another hot Sunday as we review Becoming Sister Wives. For those who are not in the know, obviously you have some idea because we've been doing it for a little bit, and you're here. We've been doing a review of Becoming Sister Wives, which is the book that the Sister Wives and Cody released early on in their television career. This is just to put it into perspective. This is about season 2, season 3 that they just got to Vegas. They're settled in and they came out with the book and they're talking about their family, how the family came together, how they exist as a family. And this particular chapter that we're going through is talking about their positions on celebrity. Now, last week we did Meri. So the way, just as format purposes, for those who may not know, be familiar with the format or layout of the book, the way they do the book, they pretty much do it in order of marriage. So Meri had the first chapter, which we covered last week. And of course, now we're going to be going over the second wife, Janelle's perspective of celebrity. Just as an offshoot, what did you think about, just as kind of that knee-jerk reaction, what did you think about Janelle's section of this book so far?
I like that she addressed celebrity since it's in the celebrity category. I felt like last week, Meri only had a couple sentences on celebrity. So I appreciated that it was within it. I feel like I learned a little bit, which I appreciate. I feel like Janelle gave a few more deets about her past and her job and all that too. And then and there wasn't as much well, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to take it right back. But I wanted to say, I feel like there wasn't as much fear of persecution that we read last time. But I think that's just because she didn't mention it as much as we heard it last year. There was still notes that I took that felt like, why'd you think that? Or I felt like Janelle would explain why she shouldn't feel that way. And then she would still say she felt that way. So it was real interesting. It was a very different vibe from Meri's chapter last week.
Right. No, I agree. I 100% agree. I think that part of the reason, because they did both talk about a little bit of the background, but in my perspective, my humble opinion, I think that Janelle did a better job of following the assignment. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, they were supposed to be talking about celebrity. And Janelle actually had a beginning, middle, and end to her talking about how the family's transition from a normal, everyday, average polygamous family that you would find around the block to notable people that you might see on TV, reality stars. And I think she did a better job of talking and describing the differences in how the family functioned before to how they function after. Whereas I agree with you 100% because we talked about it last week with regard to Meri. Meri did more this is why it's so bad on polygamists, and this is how much we suffer, and this is why I am suffering, and I'm such a oppressed person within society, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Janelle, in fairness, did have a little bit of that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it during the course of the review, but it didn't come off as pronounced because that's not all she focused on. And that's kind of where I was.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable read this time because I felt like it was a little bit more balanced. Plus, it covered their topic better. And at the same time, I felt like it was a little bit more broad, and I felt like I learned a little bit about Janelle and the family from it.
Right. Well, you know what? I think that because we can get into it, or let's maybe not rip it right off the pieces, but rip the Band-Aid off. But I think that there's a point when we talk about Janelle in this particular instance, she does a better job of describing the being more detailed with the instances of oppression. Like, I think that that's the subtle difference. Like, Meri had very generic, we're suffering and this is why we're suffering, but she didn't get into any specific examples or detail as to how they're exactly suffering. Whereas Janelle did a little better as far as nailing down or pinpointing those issues.
Yeah.
What did you think about that? Do you think
No,
that's accurate or not so much?
absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think part of that is I feel like Janelle has a better understanding of what's happening in their lives and what's going
Right.
down and reading people and reading society and all that a little bit more than Meri maybe does. I feel like Mary's a little bit more of a knee-jerk reaction and gets alarmed easier, as Christine I think probably does too when we get to her chapter. But yeah, I felt like, and Mary's, I feel like a little bit more impressionable than Janelle is. So I feel like when Meri heard the stories, she believed it hook, line, and sinker, and is taking every story she heard and applying it to her today in this day and time, even if that's not appropriate to do so. And I
Right.
felt like Janelle had a little bit more of a, there still was some of that. There were still some notes I put that I'm like, why Janelle? But in general, I felt, as we know, Janelle comes at things from more of an intellectual perspective. And
Right.
so that's how this chapter was approached. And I think that was kind of a nice, refreshing breeze to read through.
Right, right. Well, in kind of tagging into something that you said, it did amaze me, and it struck me too that it's funny that the person who didn't grow up in this situation has more of a realistic perspective of actual things that are going on within this community. Like
Mm-hmm.
like you said with Meri, and I think we might very well, I agree, we very well may see this with Christine. With Meri, I think she grew up with the mentality that we are oppressed, but she didn't know how they're being oppressed. We are, society is looking at us crazy and they're trying to come after us. But when you press her about the issue, she doesn't know exactly why, where, when, and how these things are happening. Whereas with Janelle, she's like, look, these are the things that I experienced. These are the stories that I was told. These are my sources that I'm getting this information from. And this is why I believe it. And I do think that it is kind of a logical mind to put those things together. But I also think that it becomes a lot more, it's easier for me to digest because it is so logical and it's not so much rooted in emotion. With Meri, it felt like this is how I feel
Mm-hmm.
about my presence in this society, in this community. Whereas with Janelle, she's more or less doing a reporter thing where she's giving just the facts and she's saying, look, this is what is happening and this is why, certain things are occurring within the community. And I think that that's the subtle difference.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. And in fairness to Meri, that's how a lot of us live our lives, right? Your parents teach you certain things or you live and they teach you to be scared of, like some people are scared of the police when they're raised because they're trained. The police are the bad guys. Other people are afraid of the people who live in that house that live on the corner. I mean, we had the house and that was two doors down at the far end. Stay far away from the kids and the parents and everyone in that house. Just completely fearful of it. And it's the same thing with politics. You're kind of raised with your parents' politics until eventually over time, and it stays with you for a while until you really start to completely think on your own. You think you're thinking on your own when you're making decisions early on, but really it takes adulthood to break through that. And possibly because they encompass this with so much fear, it's taking her longer to break through and see it more logically, as whereas Janelle wasn't raised with any of that, and so for her it's easier to go into it open-minded in that because there wasn't that indoctrination from her parents that you have to break through, and that's sometimes hard to do. I mean, as a kid, I remember I changed my political views from what I had growing up, and it was not easy. Because it's sort of like, well, this is what mom taught me.
Right.
But I don't think so. I don't think I can talk to her about it either.
Right.
I'm kind of seeing it differently than she did. So So I think, in fairness to Meri, because I know I started off just bashing Meri's chapter from last week, but in fairness to her, I feel like she was raised that way, and therefore it's taken her longer. And I think when we read Christine next week, I think the same thing will apply to her. I think that she's going to be one that has a harder time breaking free from the I want to say brainwashing, but ideology and fear that was instilled in her whole life, because it becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of your fabric. And that's hard to, because you have emotions tied with information. So you kind of have to break free from both of those. And Janelle didn't have to do that. So, it'll be interesting to see what Robyn's excuse is in her chapter.
Right. And I think that's an excellent point too. I think it's very telling when you are brought up a certain way, and even with the challenge of confronting your parents' beliefs and versus formulating your own. Part of the challenge is always going to be, at some point, at some level, you have to recognize the fallibility of your parents and say that, well, mom really got this wrong, in order for you to expand upon that belief system. So I think that is some of the things that, even with Janelle's perspective, as we'll get into in this chapter, I think that this giving a little glimpse into my position on it. I think that even with Janelle's perspective, they've grown accustomed to being the outsider so much and being told that they're the outsider so much, and they're conditioned in that mindset to the point where they actually believe it. And I'm not saying that in some cases they are wrong. However, I think that when you have that mindset and you go into situations and you believe that you're going to be the person on the outside, you're going to be the person who's shunned, the person who's mistreated, that you don't give the other people the opportunity to mistreat you or treat you bad or shun you. Because as Janelle revealed, as we'll talk about soon, very soon, I know we keep promising it, but it's coming, y'all. It's coming. We're priming the oven, priming the burners. But as Janelle talks about, even Meri talks about, like when they came out and said, this is who we are, most of the people that they were surrounded by and they thought were going to be, all of a sudden, my dear friend today is going to be my enemy tomorrow. As soon as they find out I'm this person, those same people turn around and say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't care. Do what you want to do. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. You like it, I love it. I don't care. And if anything, I'm more insulted, like we talked about last week, I'm more insulted at the fact that you thought I would be insulted, or you thought I would be offended, or you thought I would no longer be your friend because you tell me who you are, than I am at the thing that you are. You know what I mean? So I think that that's kind of baked into the cake too.
Yeah.
As long as we give people opportunity. Give them a chance,
Yeah, exactly. And those stories come out in this chapter too, of Janelle sharing when she didn't want to share, and being shocked by the reaction from her boss. So the exact same thing that Meri shared last time. It's not that surprising to me, but I find we jump right into Janelle's chapter. She right at the get-go says, there's a great deal of cultural fear, and then says, people of my mother's age regularly share their experiences about split ups from the government. And then she goes, these stories, again, she's never personally seen, witnessed, or experienced any of this, but these stories from the generation before have impacted me. And I became very worried about someone finding out that I wasn't like them. So that's right when I just thought, oh, you just said it right at the beginning. Did you hear what you wrote? This is another generation ago, and nobody that this has happened to in your whole life, and you're still allowing this fear to consume you, even though there's no evidence or proof. And then she said that, there was a step back when the whole FLDS raid happened, but that's so different from who they are and what they believe
Right.
and what they do, that I do understand the fear of the rest of the world not being able to unlump polygamy from the FLDS. And
Right.
I will admit, I didn't realize there was the AUB and the FLDS and, like 10 to 15 other ones that were out there. I wasn't aware of that either. So I do give the show credit for educating people along that line. But in terms of persecution, I feel like that's a
Right.
little bit different. Like, I get people might not know, they might ask questions, you might get a side eye here and there if you share that you're a polygamist, but the whole fear of going to jail and your family being separated is just that leap that I can't wrap my brain around them having that fear.
Mm.
I
Well,
wasn't
I think
living
that
in it,
there's a
so I don't know. I just can't. It's just so hard for me. I feel like I'd be like, but are they coming after us? Like, can
right.
you call them and ask them if there's something going on? I just feel like I would have so many questions. Like, why do you really believe this? Why? What is it that makes you really believe? Because they really believed it. They picked up and moved their whole family.
Right. Right. Well, because I think that there's also a point too where touching back on the idea or concept that there were other people because she talked about Tom Green, who was a polygamist who was arrested, much
Mhm.
like Warren Jeffs in that same type of situation where he was arrested. And you say, oh, wow, that's somebody in our community who was being targeted by authorities and they were arrested. Like, I keep every time I forget Warren Jeffs. Warren Jeffs, he was another one. He was arrested, but they're not looking at the circumstances for which these people were arrested, and that actually did two things for me in listening in making this connection. And I'll walk through both of them real quick. The first connection is when we talk about Warren Jeffs or Tom Green or any of the Kingstons or any of the other groups that have been arrested. There's always the point where they're being arrested because they were targeted because of something else that they were doing. They weren't arrested and pursued and warrants sworn out against them simply because they were polygamists. These are people who are assaulting young underage folks and forcing them and compelling them into marriages and situations and relationships that they have. I'm trying to be very clear for YouTube,
Yeah.
but be careful about YouTube. Get us banned. But they were doing things which they had no business doing lawfully. There's zero reason as to why they were running their communities the way they were, and it wasn't the polygamy thing. They were breaking the law. Period.
Yes.
And when we look at like the whole idea of the investigation, even in season 1, season 2, why they went to Vegas, I dare ask this question. If you look around your communities, how many people were being targeted and arrested simply because they were polygamists?
Right.
They were, and when they did find out that you were polygamous, and this is the thing that clicked for me today, because I kind of had this conversation a few weeks back. If the state of Utah wanted to arrest you because of polygamy, they had enough evidence to arrest you because of polygamy. Full stop. If they really wanted to prosecute a polygamous family, they had everything they need, including admission against interest, so they could use every tape, every scene, every episode of Sister Wives in your prosecution for polygamy if they chose to do so. Full stop. They could have arrested you on day one. When the damn show aired, they could have sent the police to your house because you were on TV committing a crime. So it wasn't the fact that they were investigating. The investigation that went so long was they were trying to figure out and discern whether they were going to press charges because of some kind of welfare fraud or any type of maybe tax situation that you had going on. That was the investigation. It wasn't an investigation into polygamy. And even with that, just to close out, the second thing that kind of came to me was a question that I had was when you talk about, people not being familiar, because that's something that is kind of ground is retread throughout the book. people not being familiar with how polygamy works and who's involved and how it actually is, and us not being familiar with the separate sects that are involved, whether it's Tom Green's sect, whether it's Warren Jeffs, the Kingstons, the AUB. What's the difference between those? How much responsibility falls on us being, people who are not in those communities being prejudiced versus you keeping those your community secret and away from our eyes and away from our knowledge, and then you're mad at us because we don't know. Right. If you told us and you shared with us and we still decided to be willfully ignorant of what's going on with you and your family and your situation in your community or whatever, then that's on us. But if you hit it back, don't be mad because we don't know. And when we come in touch with you, we hear this group is a polygamy sect, and then you also are a polygamy sect. Don't be mad at me because I'm lumping you with them, because this is like you said, this is something that was new to me. I didn't know. My brother actually knows somebody who's a polygamist, but I never met a polygamist. You know what I mean? Nobody really practicing this. I met a lot of freaky people, but that's different. But I know a lot of people doing a lot of strange things, but polygamy just for me isn't one of them. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with anyone that's a polygamist either. That's not a popular thing here. And going on that and bouncing off of what you said before, it was very popular there. As she said, just in general, LDS make up about 50% of the state. So obviously they know all about it and that too. And they probably are very honed in and attuned to what a polygamous house looks like. Where are the communities that they go to? Where are these kids going to school? Because it is the law enforcement's responsibility to make sure that all children are being educated, whether you're homeschooling them or whether they're going to an actual school. So there had to been follow-ups from the government on that. So the notion that they had to keep it all secret is almost comical to me. It seems like they would have just stood out like a sore thumb. And for them to think that they were hiding this is actually kind of silly. And for Janelle to be working for the government in a government position, I know that when she got the job, she didn't tell them that she was a polygamist. But the reality is, if something were to have happened, that her employers would have had her back. That there would have been somebody in that government office that would have gone to speak to the mayor or the governor or somebody, councilman, whoever it be, and say, listen, I didn't know either. They're very down low, but she's a good person. And from what I know of the family, they're good people too. You can look the other way. So that's why I feel like that was sort of their ticket to freedom, was Janelle getting that job. And on top of that, for them to keep pushing that narrative throughout the season is silly, because Janelle goes to her employer at the last second, right before the premiere, because she wanted to keep her job as long as possible and have a paycheck, which I thought was funny. Just in case this is going to be my last day when I tell them, I'm going to make it as close to the premiere of the show as possible. They were shocked, understandably, because you can imagine. I thought it was interesting, though. She goes, I don't look like, unless she meant FLDS look like. Like, I don't know what she meant by that. I'm like, why do you not look like? You look like every other polygamist that I know now in the polygamous world, with the exception of the more extremist fundamentalists. But she said that because she didn't look like him, that they were shocked, but they were okay, and talked to the boss's boss. Everything was fine as long as you just don't share what you do for a living on the show. That it's okay. Right. You can come out in the public. You can still work. You can do everything. Well, at that point, she had to have known, all right, we got it in the bag now. They're not going to let me go. They love me. They even let me put it on national television. I think this threat that we've been hearing about for generations may not apply to us anymore. And yet that's not how it all washed out with the family in the end.
Right. And that's kind of a big point for me too, because when rubber meets the road, I think that there's the tale of two employers.
Mhm.
as we listen to this, comparing what happened with Janelle, as Jenny mentioned, for those maybe didn't catch it, what Jenny mentioned was Janelle had went to her employer right before Sister Wives aired and told, like, sat down with her employer supervisor and said, "Look, before this happens, this is what's going on with me. I'm on a TV show. We're talking about polygamy, and this is what's happening." Versus what happened with Meri that we talked about last week. Meri let the show air, and then her employer found out about the show after it aired. Like, so they were watching the show with everybody else, and they fired her. And I think, in my mind, and I could be wrong, and Meri, you're more than welcome to call in. I'll give you the dang on link. You can come on the show tonight if you want. But I think that what happened was, and this is just my experience in corporate America, what happened was you didn't let your boss know that something was happening. They were surprised. They reacted based on where they were at the time. There are some things that you can participate in, and as long as they feel like they're in control, even with basic relationships, this works because you have to be able to give people the opportunity to save face. You have to be able to give them opportunity that they have like a little bit of a say or a choice in the matter. In Meri's case, I can see her employer saying, "You know what? We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice." Yeah, even with Janelle's situation, what did the boss say? "Look, as long as you don't talk about us and what we do here in this office, you're not talking about work. What you do in your private life is your business. Just as long as it doesn't bleed over to the job." But with
Mhm.
Mary's situation, I can also see where, because it becomes such a big spectacle, because you did have people who are starting to follow you, and all they can see is the explosion of where things were. They weren't there from the beginning. They were there around the time that you're getting called to do Good Morning America. You're being called onto these TV shows, and they're
Mhm.
there for that. And all of a sudden, it seems like, well, what if something happens? What if the people show up? What if she gets arrested? There's a lot of things we have to consider, and that's a lot for an employer to download. And to be honest with you, the easiest thing, I've said this before on the channel, the easiest thing for an employer or a person that you're trying to talk to, the easiest thing for them to say when you ask them a question is no. Because if you come to me, you ask me for a job, promotion, raise, keep your job, you tell me some information. If I say no, I get to go to lunch. I
Mhm.
get to leave for the day. If I
Mhm.
say yes, I now have to try to figure out how I can make this work in my department or in my team or whatever the case may be. It's a different set of circumstances. So never put your boss in a situation where you make it easy for them to say no. Because
Mhm.
no is what they should say and what they probably would want to say. Because, like I said, I can say no. I can say you're fired, you can't work here anymore, and I wash my hands and I just keep it pushing. As opposed to now, if they let Meri stay or they let Janelle stay, Janelle's boss, by letting her stay, is signing up for a hard conversation if things go left. Because now it's
Mhm.
your fault too. It's not just on Janelle; it's on your plate too. And that also gets into the idea of showing your boss or employer a modicum of respect because you're pulling them into a thing that
Mhm.
they have to be ready to defend. Because it's not just on Janelle; it'd be on her boss as well. Things would have went
Right.
sour. You
Yeah,
know.
and it's like an arrow of omission, right? It's a matter of trustworthiness. They're withholding information from their employer about what's going on, or Meri did, whereas Janelle comes up front, like, who are you going to trust in the end? And when it comes down to employment, an employer is going to take somebody they trust at the job better than somebody who can perform the job better, but they can't
Hmm.
trust. So,
Right.
by her not being as forthright, by Meri not being as forthright, they kind of put them in an awkward situation. And then there's always that thought in the back of your head, well, what else is there? What else do we not know
Mm.
about? Are you sure that
Right.
you're not involved in anything else? We've been watching the news, and that Janelle came at it very logically and explained how her family is different from the other ones out there and why they're doing the show, and to show they're just normal people that are living together in this polygamous relationship but have nothing to do with the other factions out there that were more extremists, and she just laid out the groundwork. You can just see a Janelle presentation. She may have had a PowerPoint.
Right.
She came about it differently, and they probably didn't even have a choice but to go, okay, well, this is very well presented. How could we say no?
Right.
You're a good
I'm not trying to get
employee.
sued.
That's right. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting and cool now that I think about it. And it
Right.
sounds like her
Right.
position in the government job, I'm not 100% sure. It's all rumors. Nobody knows for 100% sure, but somebody had mentioned that they had heard, I'll just put that out there. Who knows if it's true? But they had heard that she was involved in like the food stamp programs or that type of thing in terms of qualifying people. And because that's such a hot button topic in the polygamous realm, that it could look really bad. She never wanted anyone to know what her job was really, and kept it on the down low, because it's like, I know people who I may have said, no, yeah, they're not doing the right thing over there or whatnot. Then again, I say that and it's all hearsay because I've seen no documentation, and there's no documentation because her employer told her, don't say what you do for us.
Right.
So I don't know. It could be somebody just making something up to make it more sensational, but yeah.
Right.
So
And
if they kept her knowing that, then that would mean they really trusted her.
Right. And I can see that. Like, especially if she's in a situation where she's approving people. If you're like, you don't necessarily want to have you don't want to have a bartender attending the AA meetings. You know what I mean? Like so, yeah, if she's approving people and she's a part of the group, or necessarily part of the problem, the fraud problem, you don't want to have her making those kind of judgments. So I can see that being a hot button issue. And as you mentioned, if it is a thing where that's something that they talk about within the community, you don't necessarily want to be pulled unnecessarily into that conversation by having what she does for the office. And the crazy part is, she doesn't even have to be the person making the decision, especially in this political climate. She doesn't even have to be the person making the decision. She just has to work in office. She could be the coffee girl, and they'd be like, "Oh, she's in there putting the thumb on the scales, and that's why it's so messed up." Like so I can understand the boss's position. But Flying Chancla actually had something that I want to mention. She said someone mentioned last time that Meri had been referred to or had been fired because she worked with at-risk youth, which we all knew. And Cody described her as bait, luring other women into the family. Now, those kind of things, especially when you don't let your employer know what's coming down the pike, when they watch the show, they're coming into it with a different perspective because of something that you said. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So they're watching it. We just found out that she has a show, and we didn't know that she was a polygamist, and they're doing a show about her being a polygamist. And the only thing we know about polygamists, because somebody later had said that they're Mormon, Michelle Littlefield said that she's Mormon, and she knew there were polygamous colonies, but she didn't know where they were and how to find them, but she knew that they were out there somewhere. And so they might be familiar with it, but they might not know the polygamous people. So they're sitting there with that same mindset that we have, even though they might be in those communities and be more aware of polygamy than we are. They very well may not know, or maybe they know polygamists, just don't know that they know polygamists. But the only polygamists they're exposed to are the stories that they hear about polygamists, the negative stories they hear about, and the people who show up in the news, whether it's Tom Green or Warren Jeffs, and that's who they have to rely on. Then all of a sudden they find out that a person who works for them is a polygamist and part of these groups, and she's doing a show. And when this show comes out, what else is coming out about her? So they go into it with that mindset. And then all of a sudden, like Flying Chancla said, you have Cody joking, "Oh, Meri's the bait. She's the one that pulls them in." So you're working with kids who already have problems, and you have a husband who could potentially be like the people that we're familiar with that likes young kids. So no, you can't work here. No, it's not appropriate. And this is where like a big step comes in with letting your boss know or your employer know where you're at with these types of situations. And I would have, if I was sitting there talking to Janelle and Meri, just from my perspective, my pedestrian perspective, I would suggest that they take more of the route that Janelle took and going and having a conversation, a difficult conversation with your boss now, and letting them know now, so that that way you can start to answer any questions that they have. You can point things out and you can tell them what it is you're doing, because a lie of omission is still a lie. And the way your boss is going to take it is that you're lying to me and you're not being honest. And that could cause you problems, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
and
That's a really good
Mary does
point,
it. It might be
James.
different.
Yeah, I really like what you said about that because it was very early on. Gosh, I wonder if it was even near like the beginning of the first season in some of those interviews that they did beforehand. But Cody was very clear that he doesn't go after or pick the wives. And he really did put it out there that Meri's the one that basically would bring them in and brought Robyn in, and Meri liked to have that role too. So she agreed to it as well. So yeah, that's not going to go over well with anybody
Right.
at an at-risk youth center. If you say, yep, I'm the one that is pushing this agenda forward and I'm the one that's going out seeking them and bringing them to them. Oh yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. I never even put those two together. The fact that they were very proud about sharing that on the show and in the book. Of course, the book wasn't out at the time that she got fired, but even if that wasn't touted right from the beginning, just the notion that they would be going after some of the impressionable girls, because at-risk kids in the youth center are very impressionable. And you want to make
Right.
sure that they're surrounded by the right thing. So yeah, if you have an employee that is on the far extreme ends of what everyone else in that society believes, and this is Lehigh, Utah, we're talking about, I would say that's a very good point. I never thought about that.
Right. And even with like, you know, mainstreaming, I like the mainstream thing. But with mainstreaming it, if you look at the experiences some of these folks are dealing with, because they're in that field, they're in the trenches dealing with a lot of these kids and their problems. When you look at some of the things that they may be faced and some of the things they may have encountered, we might, like Cody calls Meri the bait. We other people who are outside of uh, these polygamous encampments or polygamous groups may call Meri the groomer. You understand what I mean? Like, because with every Jeffrey Epstein, you have a Ghislaine Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have that person who is inviting the people, and there is a point where like, I don't want to get too dark on the live, but there is a point where certain folks are in a position to disarm targets. There's certain people who could talk to, like, if you want to, there's children, like with kids tend to trust women more than they trust men, because of the way, a lot of times, the way kids are brought up. Don't trust that man. You see a man in a creepy van, don't talk to that stranger. And usually the stranger is a man that you're telling your kids not to trust.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a man out there and he's looking for his puppy or he's offering you candy. Don't you talk to him. But if it's a young lady or a woman who's sitting there saying, I'm looking for my baby, I'm looking for my child, and you see this woman as the mother, you don't realize that she could be just as much a predator. And with that in mind, you know, they deal, like, I might be saying something that's a little outside for some folks, but the people that she would be working with deal with kids who have these issues, these problems, and these circumstances all the time. So when they hear that, you know, she's the bait and she's the one bringing them into the family, they take it completely different, and they take it a lot more serious than, you know. I heard that, you know, I was a little off put by Cody calling Meri the bait just because I thought it was in bad taste. But they may listen to that same phrase and say, wait a damn minute. Like, we have kids that she has access to, and I'm not trying to, you know, cross any lines. And again, I think that comes down to, you know, the honesty factor.
Yeah, yeah. And even if they didn't even hear any of that, they could still be fearful of the kids that they are entrusted to take care of, knowing that there are other subcultures that are doing it wrong, and the whole appearance of it all. I never really put that together before. I mean, my goodness, with the amount of human trafficking, and I don't know, it's out of control. I know the state that I live in, I think, is number 2 in the nation in terms of human trafficking, which is shocking to me. But it's been for a while. It's a real issue. We're just in the Midwest, but go figure. So it's prevalent around here, and everyone's very aware of it. And there's a lot of talk about it, and there's a lot of awareness of what to look for and everything. And definitely a lot of the education we received is the people that they are targeting are people that are in need, that are desperate, right, that don't have a supportive home life, that, like the kids that are probably in the center would be absolutely at the top of the list of where, and this isn't human trafficking, but I'm trying to make the correlation of, you have an outfringed different kind of group. It is your job as the boss to say, because we don't know 100%, we have to err on the side of protecting the kids. And sad,
right,
like obviously Meri wasn't going to do that. That wasn't her intent for being there. I mean, I think she learned after Robyn, she was never going to try to find another wife for her husband. That was never going to happen. If anything, it's going to complete opposite. But you can't blame the owners of the place for doing what their job is to do. And that is first and foremost, before educating the kids or life skills or any other thing, they're there to keep those kids safe.
Right. Yeah. And I want to be very clear, neither Jenny nor I am saying that Meri had anything to do with anything. Like, that's not what we're saying.
No.
We're just merely saying that this is a perspective that the employers could have come to, or maybe not even the people who work directly with Meri, because they knew her, they knew the content of her character, but other people in the department who may not have had a daily contact with her and are just looking at things from a universal or broad, like a mile high perspective, may have come to these types of conclusions. And even with regard to something that you said, talking about troubled youth or troubled kids, when we talk about troubled kids, a lot of times we focus on the idea notion that these kids are vulnerable to doing the wrong thing. And so that's why they're troubled, because, or kids who are in jeopardy, because they are targeted because they may be vulnerable to juvenile delinquency, or like some kind of legal issues or troubles, whatever the case may be. But there is a point where we can say as well that troubled youths aren't just targets for being susceptible to doing the wrong thing, but they're actually targets for people who want to take advantage of them. Because if you think about it, who are the people who are most victimized in our society? People who don't have people who are on their side. People don't have folks who can stand up for them or protect them or speak for them. These are the people who are the most vulnerable. Folks who, if something were to happen to one of them, or they stop coming home or whatever the case may be, and nobody would show up to the police station within a half hour to an hour and ask where the hell their kid is or what's going on or whatever the case may be, they show up to the hospital. And unfortunately, you have some kids who are in a situation where they could show up to the hospital. The doctor could call the parents. The parents don't pick up the phone, or they talk to the parent. Little Junior is here. He fell down the steps. He needs you to come in right away. And the parents don't show up. The doctor will be sitting in the emergency room and have to send the police out to the house to go try to pick the parents up to bring them back to the hospital so they can sign documentation to let the kid out so they can release the child. And it's unfortunate, but those kids are children who are in jeopardy, because those are kids who things happen to, because not nice people aren't the only ones who notice that nobody is checking on them. Yeah. So a lot of times the more malignant folks in our society are the ones who really notice that this kid is by themselves. This kid doesn't have anybody to talk to. This kid doesn't have any support systems in the home. This kid doesn't have the things that would put me in jeopardy as a bad guy. Um, they don't have those things in place. So those kids are at risk youth, not just because they're at risk because they might do something criminal, but they're at risk because these are the kids who get targeted by folks who are in cults, by people who do have nefarious motives to try to befriend a child. So, with all that being said, there's a lot of things that go into play when you talk about not being honest with your employer or not letting your employer know or letting your employer find out you're on a TV show with doing behaviors. The reason why you have the show is, if we're going to be honest, is because you're participating in behaviors or activities that the rest of society may deem to be a little more out of step.
Right. And Lori Carrad had a really good point. And I remember hearing this too in an interview somewhere. I just don't remember where it was. But Meri had said at one point that in terms of the firing, that the boss cited the fact that cameras were following them. And remember, they showed that on the show that, they were trying to keep the kids and tried to have decoys. So when the kids got off the school bus, they wouldn't, which is kind of funny because they're on the television show. Like if they weren't on the television show, I would get that more, but nevertheless, that's fine. But they did have TMZ and some of these other more salacious news magazine-y kind of shows following them around. And the employers didn't like that. And that could coincide with what we're talking about here too. The chance that one of those faces gets on film and the wrong person sees it and, feels like there's blood in the water, and then all of a sudden is targeting a child that's at the center. So it is what it is. What can you do? Sadly.
It is.
I mean, Janelle lost her job eventually too, right? Because they had to move.
Yeah. What goes around comes around. Welcome to the club, sucker.
She's gonna lose it. Meri was gonna lose it eventually anyway. I mean, a year later, they ended up picking up and leaving the state. So she it's not that big a deal. It was only 1 year that she was out. She could have taken that year to just go to school full time.
Right. Get her degree. Yeah.
Work somewhere else, do some online counseling, whatever it is that she likes to do. She still can't. I don't think she ever finished that. Did she ever finish the degree?
No, not that I know of. Yeah. It was something that she had went back when she was doing the Sister Wife's Closet. She had talked about going back to school.
Right.
And at that time, Robyn had just tried to dissuade her from going back to school.
Yeah.
So
not even tried to dissuade her. Almost full on came out and begged her not to.
Right.
Guilt tripped her into not getting a higher education than what she had, and guilt tripped her into continuing to package up and ship out all of the jewelry so that Robyn didn't have to actually work herself. Yeah, so that's a shame.
Right.
I wish she would go back. She still can. She can still go get that degree and still work. If that's still a passion inside of her heart, there's no reason she can't be doing online work from that carriage house upstairs and still do that kind of counseling. So I hope she does that for herself.
Yeah, well, I think now she's doing the self-help thing with the level up.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that lasts. Unless she gets some good advice from somebody, I think that's going to go belly up soon. Not a whole lot of people out there with an extra $300 to throw around for advice and trinkets. That's like all I really got from it. It's not like, and it's advice from a friend kind of advice, not like legal or therapeutic or anything that comes with a backing behind it. So if that's the route she's going, I think she should just go get her degree first, make herself legit and justified, and get some sort of certificate to back herself up, and then continue with it. But I mean, Godspeed. I hope it's hugely successful for her and it just takes off. It's just hard to believe from reading through the website. And I'm like, well, who's going to buy this? I don't know.
Yeah, buying chocolate had some like the blind leading the blind. I would just say that, and in fairness to Meri, like I'm not familiar with your products or your program, but just an initial response, it just came off, at least to me as somebody who's not familiar, with your stuff. It just comes off more or less like the MLM approach, where
Yeah.
people should join it just because you say it's cool, but and
Mm-hmm.
you say that it'll help. And I think that if that's the case, then it doesn't really do what's promised, and
Yeah.
that's just an issue
Yeah.
that some folks may have. But
Yeah.
just as a curiosity thing, and then we'll get back into the book real quick. It just occurred to me when you said that we were talking about Meri going back to school and Robyn trying to stop her. Robyn wanted to stop her because, if we're going to be honest, Robyn was concerned that Meri, who was the worker for Sister Wives Closet, and was going to take over Sister Wives Closet while Robyn maintained ownership and control of said company, Meri was going to be the partner who took over and did the work.
Mm.
So Robyn would have kept her name on the letterhead and everything else as the person who was running it. Meri would have did the work, and Robyn would have focused on raising her kids. But as you recall, or you recall, when Meri approached Cody and told him she wanted to go back to school, Cody was very excited about sending her back to school and her participating in school. And it just occurred to me, and I'm asking the chat too, and I ask your opinion on this. And maybe this is just me like Cody. And I don't want to be that negative guy, negative Nancy. But it occurred to me that maybe, like at first I was like, wow, Cody's really supporting her education. So education might really be important to them. But it just occurred to me like a light bulb switch. It flipped off. Did Cody support Meri going back to school because he knew that it would occupy more of her time? And if she was in school, that would require less time being spent for him to be spent at her house, because it gives him an excuse not to come over. Girl, I got to let you study. I got to let you do your work because I need you to get them A's. I need you on the D's list, girl. Do your thing. So, because I remember Robyn was banged up about it. I know she went back, and Cody and Robyn had a conversation. When Meri talked to Cody about going back to school, I know Cody went home and told Robyn that this is what Meri planned to do. Because Robyn had that look when Meri said, "Can I talk to you?" It was like she already knew what the conversation was going to be about. So, and I know that like Robyn has that way of like trying to pull Cody's strings in the background. So when Cody says that this is what Meri wants to do, I'm surprised. I would be very surprised if Robyn didn't say to Cody, she needs to not go to school because she needs to help me with Sister Wives Closet. And if you want to have another baby, this is what you're going to do for me. In which case, Cody normally would come back and say, Meri, I changed my mind. You need to work with Robyn on Sister Wives Closet. And that would have been it. Right. But he didn't do that. So what do you think about it? Am I wrong? Am I just like dumping on Cody unnecessarily?
No, not at all. Not at all. I believe wholeheartedly that Cody was completely unprepared with the information when Meri came to him with it. He seemed shocked by it all, and then he gave his blessing for it, and he seemed shocked that she was shocked that he was okay with it. He was kind of like, well, yeah, and possibly because it'll get you out of my hair, because I'm tired of you constantly saying, come on over and spend time with me and hold my hand and let's watch a movie. And, like, this is going to keep you busy. This is going to be great. And I can see Cody's wheels going, this is going to bring in more money to our family. So it's a win-win-win-win-win for Cody, for her to go back to college and get this degree. She's out of my hair. She's going to make more money in the long run. Yes, we can help fund this for her and get this degree. And then he was probably shaking in his boots when he told Robyn, because she said to him, Meri said to Cody in the mail, she's like, I don't think that Robyn is going to be that supportive. And he's like, what? He was out of the loop. He could not read a room. I mean, just like today, he can't read his wives. He is no subtle cues. He can't pick up on them. And so he had no idea why. So he's still completely unaware of the fact that Robyn is having Meri do all the work. And by her not being there, and she basically came out and said it too to Meri, like, but the business.
Right.
Come on. Which is what's so funny about it. Like, I could see in that moment that the nanny would be justified, but I need to go back and rewatch do you remember what is the first episode that we know for a fact the nanny was there? And the first nanny was her sister before her niece.
Right.
So when did her sister actually come? Was it right after Solomon was born? Or was it a little bit later on after they were in the houses and they were starting with this business and she used the business as her justification?
No, actually, if you go back and look at it, when I was on a rewatch last summer, I noticed because I knew the characters or the people, I was more familiar with them. She was actually present before, like because in a lot of the videos when they were in Vegas, when they first got to Vegas, a little bit after they got settled into the individual homes, you would see the sister at a lot of those events. So she was already present.
Well, in the individual homes, like the rentals or the homes?
Yes. Yeah. And that's where Christine, because we first found out that she actually had a nanny because Christine came out and said, yeah, I wanted to watch the kids. And it really hurt me when you wouldn't let me watch the kids. And Robyn said, we really going to do this now? Are you serious? We're going to do this now? You know, and then she was upset about it. And that was when they were still in the rentals. You know, that was even before they had the had the homes. Yeah, they've been around.
Okay, so, that's probably one of my favorite scenes. There's, I can count on one hand the ones that are like my favorites. And in terms of back in the day, that would probably be one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah,
where she confronted and Robyn was so shocked, and she's like, "Are we really doing this right here, right now on the couch? Are you calling me out right here? This is not what we do here. We have each other's back, remember?" And Christine was like, "No, hurt my feelings. It offended me. I wanted to watch those kids, and you got somebody else." So yeah, I didn't realize that scene was with Saul. So it was early on. So it sounds like she would have been there because they were there about 10 months in those rentals when Saul was born. So they probably brought her on. Maybe she didn't have a place to live. Maybe she talked Cody into just having her stay with them. And it's like, well, eventually she'll be the nanny and she'll know the routine and who knows for all we know. Oh, okay. That's
I think that they were helping the three. They were helping Brianna, Aurora, and Dayton. I think that's they brought them in to help them because the kids that Christine would have been watching would have been the older three. It would have been Solomon.
True.
You know, it would have been
that far back. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So she had her there right from the get-go.
Right. Out the gate. So
there is absolutely no excuse.
The whole time.
Yeah. None.
Yeah, and if you recall, this is why I say the TLC did her no favors in the editing. Because if you recall, it was like the first episode when they were talking about getting the money for going to get the fish tank or Shark Tank. I did a whole thing on it, but they were talking about doing the Shark Tank. It was the first episode where Robyn was sitting in a closet with Cody talking to him about getting help because she wants to have a baby. And that's when she was talking about, I want to expand the family and I want to have another baby with you. Because she was talking about Aurora, getting pregnant with Aurora. And in order to do that, we have to secure the money or get the backing. And then it was in the next episode, I think it was either that same episode or the very next episode is when Meri dropped the bomb that it was the same episode because Meri dropped the bomb that she wanted to have a baby. And Cody said, yeah, I got one wife telling me that she wants to step away from the business. And I have Meri telling me she wants to go back to school. So what are we going to do as far as sister wives is concerned? But how do you argue with Meri when you want to step away from the business? You're arguing with her about staying in the business. I need you to stay here so we can work together. When the whole time you're planning your exit. That was crazy to me. It was crazy. And you're arguing with her about fulfilling her dreams and pursuing stuff that she wants because it's interfering with your plans of fulfilling your dreams. And then you turn around and say, yeah, they don't know me and they acting like I'm selfish and I'm only worried about myself. Like, what? Because you are. Because that's the way it's coming off.
That's golden, James. That is golden. I don't remember that. I'm going to go back. I know I have the clip of just that couch scene of that confrontation that I have in a file for, kind of like the liar that Robyn is. But that
Right.
takes it one step further in terms of her setting this all up, knowing that, you need to be here because I'm leaving. I'm just going to be home
Right. Right.
watching my 2 kids with the nanny too.
I'm out like shot. What are you talking about?
Oh my
I, I
goodness.
need a worker. And you'll be doing this, yeah, because it was that's what it was. It was season 7, episode 1. Season 7, episode 1, where they were talking about Mary drops a bomb, and they were talking about because it was by episode 2 they started doing the shark. That was the polygamist in the Shark Tank. So it's
Okay.
season 7, episode 1, when they had the whole conversation about I need to get out of here because I want to start having kids with you, Cody. And who the hell starts a business and the business is about to get a $22 million infusion? And you say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and take some time off and start a family. Nobody does that. Unless you plan on stealing money. We can get into that later. But yeah.
Yeah. But that's insane. That's insane. And that her justification is I needed the nanny because of the job, but she kept Meri from going to school so that she could help her with the job.
Right.
And then at the same time turns around and says, well, I needed the nanny for, my work. Like, what work do you do?
Yeah,
Oh, goodness. Yeah. All right. At the beginning here, one thing I do also want to point out is that I felt a little bit for Janelle. It seemed like she really was going through it. She enjoyed the whole taping of everything, as did Meri. Like, they were fascinated by the whole kind of behind the scenes, the producers' angle, how they go about doing things, how they set things up and say, just have a natural conversation. Like, I can't do a natural conversation with cameras on. And them getting used to it all and seeing how it all works fascinated both of them. Janelle goes on to share that she was really fascinated with the whole like money and contract side of it too, because she was the one that dealt with the contract. So Janelle knows everything. So she was the actual one in the family that dealt with the contracts with TLC. So she felt like she learned and liked a lot of that. But before, as that's all happening and she's having a grandiose time and thinking, this is a lot of fun. And she then stresses all summer long over it because she said, as soon as we were done having the fun of filming, we realized, now they're editing it. Now they're putting their story together and their narrative. And then we have no control and we're just going to sit back and watch and see what happened at the very end. And that she was so worried about that she went so far as to seek counseling at one point during the summer. And I just thought, wow, like she really, and the next line is, this annoyed Cody.
Right.
Of course it did. We know Robyn and Cody hate therapy. They don't want to ever be told that they're wrong in any way. And so they hate going to see a therapist because there's always a very good chance of them being told, you might need to do a little work on your end as well. So they're not happy with any of that. And Cody could not understand the value, which means he also could not understand and relate to the emotions that Janelle was going through at that time. And that is so Cody too, that he's completely unaware. And he just told her, don't worry about it. You got to stop worrying about this. Everything's going to be fine. What did he say? You need to think more positively. Oh, thank you.
Right.
If somebody would have just told me that earlier, I would have had a better summer. Think positively. Thank you. I don't need therapy. It's so ridiculous. He's so insane. Yeah. So, and of course, this is all leading up to the beginning of the premiere. So throughout these summer months, she still hadn't told her employer yet. So that's a huge part of the anxiety. There was the fear of coming out, the fear of the past years of persecution, which she went on to say the government raids of the 1950s. So, we're worried about the government raids of the 1950s. All right, fine. You said it. I'm just going to read exactly what you wrote. We're still worried about the 1950s. Okay. So there was that. There was the fear of losing her job. There was just the fear in general of like people associating her with her family, that the family members may not have known, that kind of thing. Because I know Janelle kind of got cut off from her family a little bit. Although I don't think that was as normal. I had somebody write me in a comment on one of my videos and said that they were Mormon too, LDS, and that they were aware of the polygamists and all that out there, and that they didn't know anybody who shunned anybody. Because in our conversation, we were kind of talking about shunning. I don't remember why it went or which chapter we were reading at the time. But then we were talking a little bit about the Amish community and doing some comparison and whatnot, and the shunning that truly does happen in the Amish community. And she said that she's just not, that wasn't her experience, that isn't her experience, that she's LDS now.
Right.
And, you know, they know some people and they're taught in their faith to love everybody, and persecution is God's to do, not theirs to do in life. And she really came from a whole different perspective. So I appreciated that she was sharing that and giving that opinion. But clearly, Janelle didn't feel that. And I don't think her family in particular ascribed to that, because she claims that she and her mom were shunned for a while. They eventually came back and came around,
Right.
but for a while were shunned. So anyway, I just wanted to point out the fact that I felt bad knowing that she had a really rough summer that summer as she was mulling all this over. I was proud of her that she was like, I need help. I'm going to seek counseling. And then I found the
Right.
typical Brown family pattern in that Cody thought it was ridiculous and that she just needed to think more positively and everything would be fine.
Because that's how it always works. Get over it. You're, oh, okay. I didn't, you know, I'm having these issues and these problems that's keeping me awake at night. I'm losing hair. I'm losing sleep. I don't know what's going on with me. I think I need to talk to somebody. No, what you need to do is get over it. You know what? I never thought of it like that.
Mhm.
That's what I need to do. I need to just get over it.
Thank you so much.
That piece of advice always works.
Always. 100%. That's the most
Yeah.
reliable piece of advice out there.
Oh, okay. I didn't consider getting over it. I mean, I was dwelling in my problems. But you know, one of the things that you touched on was the idea of Cody getting angry, and it occurred to me that part of the reason why Cody may have gotten angry and told her to get over it, and he was upset that she went and talked to a therapist, was because part of her therapy and part of her healing process that the therapist may suggest is that by participating in the show is giving you this much stress. Maybe you shouldn't participate in the show. It's kind of that doctor joke, like you go to the doctor and say, "Oh, my shoulder hurts when I do like this," and the doctor says, "Well, stop doing like this." You know what I mean? If this show is causing you that much stress and it's causing you that much issue, maybe you aren't in a position to do the show. And I kind of got into a thing where I thought about it, and let me know what you think. Where Janelle always came off as the quiet person, the kind of go along to get along person that she describes for herself. With folks like that, what I find is they oftentimes put themselves in a situation where they are the ones who are more likely to write you a nasty letter or fire off a nasty email, but aren't necessarily the ones to have an in-person confrontation or conversation with you. Like they'll sit down and get mad, which, by the way, if you are ever in a situation where you get pissed at, especially at work, you get pissed at work or your personal life with somebody you're close to, don't fire off that email. Write it out, put it in the draft section, walk away, and come back and read it again.
Yeah. Preferably 24 hours later.
Right. The next day is it. Because if it's truly an issue, it's truly a problem, you're making solid, copious points that you just come back, you fire the email. If it's true, it's true. It is what it is. But, sometimes you say things in a way that you don't necessarily want to say them in. That's just my observation. Take it or leave it. But if she's that type of person, that's kind of what that felt like. It felt like somebody was like, I'm going to be free. I'm going to tell people what it is. I'm going to tell you that you got to accept me for who I am because I'm a queen. I'm a goddess. Da-da-da-da-da. And you shoot the show. And then once the show is shot, it's in the can and they're editing the show. Then you have that 24-hour cool down period. And you start thinking about it like, oh, damn. I went out there and I showed everybody who I really was. And now you don't have any control of it. It's like sending that email off. Once you send it off, you don't have any control over how the person is going to take it, what their response is going to be, whether they're going to retaliate against you. You have no control over it. So now you're kind of playing the waiting game. And I think that's where some of the stress came in because now you're sitting there and part of the worst part of that whole scenario is the waiting. Like, because if they fire off and they come right back, then you guys are in the heat of battle, and it is what it is. But now you're waiting to find out how they're going to take it, what they're going to say, whether you're going to be accepted, whether, you know, the stories you've heard for all these years about like the oppression of polygamists, whether that's actually true. Well, I'm about to find out now, because once they air the show, it's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of got that feeling as I was reading it.
Well,
but what do you think? Do you think I'm onto something or not so much?
Yeah, I think that matches who she is in her personality too, right? Because she's reflective. So during that time, she started panicking and thinking, oh, shoot. Mind you, probably nobody comes off better because she is so quiet, holds her cards close to her chest, sweet, just, you know, kind of go along to get along kind of person. So there was no ruffling of feathers whatsoever when it came to the storyline with Janelle. And of course, Janelle's the one who talks about the anxiety, not being able to sleep at night, going to see a counselor. Right. Oh my gosh, I realized I was just myself. What have I done? But she's such a good person that it all ended up being fine. I don't think Cody lost a wink. He should have been the one that was concerned, but he was probably, if he lost any sleep, it was because he had anxious anticipation for it to come out. Like he just couldn't wait for everybody to see him and his family on television. So yeah, it just matches their personality between the two of them too. That he's just like, what? Get over it. It's fine. It's going to be great. Everything's wonderful. It's just, oh my gosh. Yes.
Well, because even like, cause that's a good point too. Because even with the Cody side of it, as I really thought about it, I put my mind to it. From Cody's perspective, like when Janelle, you look at Janelle's perspective, what happens for her? She's involved with this thing. She has a job she loves. She's defined by her job. And I've known, like I said, in corporate America, you meet people all the time who hey, how are you? What's your name? And they'll hand you a business card with their position on it. Or when they say their name, it's always, I'm vice president so-and-so of such and such and such department. You know, and their title becomes part of who they are. And I can see a scenario where Janelle kind of fell into that category where, even as she admittedly said, that she was kind of defined by her position, which, you know, it is what it is. But when it comes to Cody, to complete that thought, and I'll go to Cody. For Janelle, because she is defined by her job and she's defined by her career as a career woman, she has something to lose. By going public, she now has something to lose. Her world could be destroyed, you know, and her identity could be destroyed. Whereas when you look at Cody, everything that has happened to him to this point, as far as the show is concerned, has been a net positive. He was able to get a woman he found desirable, you know, the Diesel Jean model. And he was going to be a successful polygamist because he had a hot wife. And now all of a sudden he's going to be on television and people are going to know who he is. And, you know, even though he may have experienced some popularity at the church and in his private social circles, now the world is going to be exposed to him and he's going to have those same successes. His situation is going to change. TLC, at that point, when they aired the first episode, you figured TLC did a lot of things for him and his family. As far as he was concerned, it benefited him directly. He was able to have a huge wedding. He was able to have a huge reception. He was able to come out and be the person that he always wanted to be. He was able to come out and present himself the way he wanted to present himself. So everything that was happening for him was positive. So when he looked at Janelle and suffering, and this could even be translated into later when we get into like the whole COVID experience and how things were going during season 16, 17, and 18, where he didn't understand what the problem was because he didn't understand other people's suffering because he was getting what he wanted. In this situation, this early on, you have that mirror experience because he was getting everything he wanted. So when she came to him and said, this could be a problem, he's like, what's the problem? Because I'm making out like a bandit. I don't understand why there's a problem. You need to get over it and start opening your eyes to all the good things that are happening to us. Translation, all the good things that are happening for me, and get on board. You know, because it was going good for him. And it wasn't necessarily, like you said, Janelle was looking at it like, you know, this could go horribly wrong. And Cody's like, I've been winning so far. He's the guy at the blackjack table in Vegas. Like, as long as he has a stack of chips sitting in front of him, it's the best time ever.
Yeah.
But you're one hand away from losing all those chips and having that long ass 2 hour ride back home where everybody, nobody in the car talks.
Yeah.
Because you lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah. Oh, he's definitely put it all on red kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got this. Been hitting red all night. Black 47 black. No.
Wait,
they get
that
kicked
was
out
our
because
whole
he tried
life
to reach and take
savings.
his money back.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there do-overs?
Yeah, right. I made a mistake.
Yeah. I mean, he lives his life that way, right? Because he has to have everything new and shiny and cool, and he likes to collect convertible cars and motorcycles and four-wheelers and half the stuff he doesn't even use. I was just listening to a podcast today, and I don't know, I think it was Nikki Haverstock's, and it was from a while ago. It was like a review of a show from a previous season. I don't even know what season. I don't know what show or anything. But her husband will make comments about the different stuff that Cody has because he's familiar with it. They have a farm. They have animals. They have four-wheelers. They have guns. So they're familiar with a lot of the terminology, apparatus, etc. that's on the show. And the husband said, just want to point out that he mentioned in this episode, he still hasn't fired the gun once. And I don't know how far, I don't know how far, but the point being, it was a significant period of time from whenever said gun was gifted to him from the family. Right. So he's all excited. He gets this toy and never uses it. He's like, you know how many ranges there are in Vegas? They're like a dime a dozen. Right. The desert's everywhere. There's like a million places you can go. He hasn't used the thing once. And it just goes along the line. Like he's a collector of lots of things. He just likes to spend money. He just likes to be flashy to make it look good. He has a huge hole inside of him that he's trying to fill. Right. Filling it with wives, filling it with things, trying to fill it with money, appearances, and all that. And nothing's worked, which is why he ended up a broken man at the very end there. I don't know what it is he needs to fill it with. He had an amazing family, lost that too in the search for something that he.
Right. That reminds me of like the analogy of the dog with the bone. Like there's a dog walking down a river. Riverbank, and he has a big fat bone in his mouth, and he looks into the river and he sees his reflection thinking it's another dog with a big fat bone. He said, if I can scare this dog off, I'm gonna have two bones. So he goes to scare the dog off with the bone in his mouth, drops it in the river. Now he has zero bones. And that's kind of where I see Cody at. Like he had the thing that would have made him happy, but he wasn't satisfied with what he had. And that's one of the things that I like growing up, I'd always had the perspective that, it could always be worse. That's one of the things that has always got me through any tough times. Like you go through something, you experience something bad, you say, you know what? As bad as this is, it could always be worse because it can always be worse.
Yes.
And don't challenge the universe. It can't get no worse than that. And the universe is like, hold my feet.
It'll get worse.
I'm gonna show you what worse look like. But there was an old saying that I kind of latched onto, even in that mindset or that thinking, and it was simply, I complained about my shoes until I met a man with no feet, and I think that where Cody is pursuing all these things, because like you said, that's an excellent point as far as the farm. I never really considered it, but being a part of that gun culture, I understand that there are places you can go, like as cheap as $5. You can go to places in Las Vegas and most states, as cheap as $5, outdoor ranges, and you can shoot as many bullets as you want, however you want at those targets, and they don't care. All you got to do is pay for your ammo. So your day out at the range is as expensive as how much ammo you want to bring, whether it's a box or you want to bring a whole case. They don't care. You shoot as much as you want. You dump it all in the mouth if you like. Yeah. But it's weird to me because, like you said, that was an expensive weapon that that the family purchased for him, and he was very excited about it. But he
Mm-hmm.
didn't break that thing out. He said it's going to be the first time I shot this, and it was when his brothers came to town, and that
Mm-hmm.
was months later. And they're like, I can't imagine a guy. Usually, gun guys are like kids in candy stores. Like
Oh
if they
yeah,
have
the next
a
day.
weapon that they just received, yeah,
Yeah.
they go to the range as soon as possible. They
Mm-hmm.
might be there when the damn place opens. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? The next
Yeah.
morning.
If it's still open that day, they'd be there before close.
Right.
Yeah. Let's
Well,
just
we
see
need to
how this
get
works.
going. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's Christmas, but but we got bang bang shoot 'em up. So I can. I mean, I think that's an excellent point. And like you said, like the collecting of cars, the collecting of jewelry, the collecting of
Oops, you're muted. There you
all these things. And hold on one second. Do you hear music in the background?
No.
Oh, okay. I had music playing in my background, but
No. No.
like a ticket. Oh wow. Okay. Um, not sure what that is, but oh okay. I think I got it. There it
Okay.
is. But you have all these things going on, and you're collecting all these things, but you don't find value in any one of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
you're so busy looking at the next thing that you can't appreciate the thing that you have because the next thing is going to make your life better. The next wife is going to make your life better. The next motorcycle, car, house, whatever the case may be. And all you find is a lifetime of emptiness. And like you said, you just spend a lot of time trying to fill that void that can't be filled because you don't find happiness in yourself. The first place you should find refuge and happiness is yourself. Because if you like being in a room with you, like I've always said that, like one of the powers in any relationships that you can have is that if you enjoy your company and you can sit in a room by yourself, then it doesn't matter if the person you're with doesn't like you anymore, doesn't want to be with you anymore, because you're okay with you. I'm okay being by myself. You know what I mean? I like me.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like you and you're okay with being with you, then when somebody else mistreats you or doesn't treat you with the same respect or whatever the case may be, then that's fine. You don't have to be around me anymore because I'm cool with me. I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
have you around in order for me to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't find that happiness in yourself, you're always looking outward to find that happiness, that satisfaction, or that contentment, then what happens is you're always looking for that next thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that might be, just a little, little pop psych, I guess, on Cody's mentality. But that's just how he comes off on TV to me, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that he's
Yeah.
always looking for that next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. He's never going to find it though.
No, no, and that was actually something that you brought up with regard to him saying to Janelle about being on the show. You know, uh, with Janelle saying I should go tell my employer. He tell them not to bother because they're gonna see it. They're gonna whether they like it or not. It is what it is because
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. And once I get this show, like this show in and of itself, like even with the run that they had, the money that they made on this show could have made this family so happy. Like, because
Oh.
I'm going to do a video this week. I promise. I'm doing a video on Janelle's recent purchase of that like 152-acre property she bought down in North Carolina near
Mm-hmm.
Madison. Could you imagine if the sister wives, the Brown family, would have went to North Carolina, hell, Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have spent $300,000 on the land,
Mm-hmm.
which is $600,000 less than they spent on Coyote Pass. They
Mm-hmm.
could have started to build the house or the home that they wanted to build custom on
Yeah.
100 some odd acres of land.
Yeah.
And they could have built that house as big as they wanted to. Maybe not the Queen of Versailles house, but they could have built a big old house with apartments and all that stuff that they wanted to build.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been way cheaper than that property in Coyote Pass.
Yeah.
And especially if you put Robyn's house on top of it, what they paid for Robyn's house and what they paid for Christine's house, they
Yeah.
definitely could have built a big old house down
Yeah.
there. No problem. And they would have
Yeah.
had enough money. Ironically, if they would have went 17 seasons, they would have had enough money where they wouldn't have had to worry about money or paying the property. That thing would have been paid off years ago.
Oh,
You know.
if the money would have been managed properly, and it wouldn't have been spent on so much toys and other frivolous stuff, I don't even know what. I mean, I know they like to go out to eat a lot, or Cody likes to go out to eat a lot. We see that on all the showing time. It's a get together with the wife. We're going to go out to eat. So it's the two things he likes to do is go out to eat and drive cars whenever he's going on a date. But those kids could have all been put through college. They could have all had their own homes on land and property that would just be increasing in value, and they could still have a significant fund that they could draw from each individually. Right. They would have a life savings to tap into for when this all ends. Now, the wives are pretty smart about social media. I don't know how many people are going to be following Cody, when this all ends, maybe for a little bit, just for shits and giggles, but eventually it's going to wear off. But I think the wives might keep them a little bit more because they're a little bit more savvy, and the kids will probably get into that kind of stuff too. So there is a little bit of additional revenue from the show that I think could come to them, but Cody's just been blessed. He has been blessed that the show is still going. And when they cut back significantly, and my understanding was by significantly, it was they kind of each sort of had their own paycheck, but it was given to them in a lump sum. And Cody agreed to just have one person's worth of income to be their lump sum. Like they got rid of 3/4 of the amount of money to keep the show going. And TLC said, okay, probably the smartest business move Cody ever made, I will have to say, because then after that, we see all of COVID and his true colors and him showing his personality and Robyn being a mess. And then all of a sudden it kind of took off and became crazy reality TV after that. I don't know what they're getting now anymore, but I know he's not getting 3/4 of it. He's only got his little portion now. The other wives have their own stuff. But yeah, that was the smartest thing that he ever did at that point. So obviously, as things picked up, the money would have picked up too. But even back then, there is no reason why those homes that were between $200,000 and $300,000 shouldn't have been paid off so early on with them living there, and definitely 7 years in. By the time they were leaving, they only had a couple kids take off to college. They were going to UNLV. They said it's something like $10,000 a year to go there or something. It's not. I mean, I know Leon went to an expensive college, but other than that, I think a lot of them went to state schools if they did go. The big ticket expense items. I mean, it didn't happen. There were no vehicles. Everything. Janelle's window was held on with duct tape. If you look close, probably your fender was too. And certainly, I don't know what was holding the tires together, but it wasn't working, whatever it was. So they weren't spending it on vehicles either. Where was the money going? All we ever see on the show are birthday gifts for Cody. Here's a MacBook. Here's a ammunition. Here's another special vibrating reclining chair. Here's whatever it is. Here's a saddle thing for your motorcycle. I'm like, well, where's the motorcycle? I didn't see them packing the motorcycle when they were going down to Vegas, but all of a sudden, as soon as they get to Vegas, he gets the stuff to put on, the paraphernalia to go along with it.
The saddlebags,
yeah. I'm like, oh, right. There's a motorcycle here too. We haven't seen the motorcycle at all. I don't know. Never on there. Have you ever seen him drive the motorcycle on the show? I don't remember.
Well, I've seen the motorcycle in pictures previously.
Okay.
And there was an episode, I think it was season 5 or 6, where his brothers came down. It's the one brother who passed away. They were taking a bike ride, and they rented a motorcycle it was a touring bike they rented for the brother.
Yes.
And he was riding his motorcycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that.
Well, actually, I think that Cody rode, as crazy as this, I think Cody rode the touring bike, the bike he rented, and he had the brother ride his motorcycle. So he rode the newer bike, and then he had his brother ride and then his brother later passed away in a motorcycle accident. So that was kind of sad.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, but he you didn't see, because I think that the car was bad enough. You know what I mean? Because if you have kids, I have a bike. I have a motorcycle, and and it's bad enough when you have kids because obviously when I ride my bike, I'm the only one riding my bike. You know what I mean?
Right.
I ride my bike with me, and I can fit one person on the back. And that's it. And I
Yeah.
have two kids, so it's a really it's a selfish vehicle, and I acknowledge that fully. It's a selfish vehicle. I enjoy riding it, but at the same time, I also have cars. Like I have two cars. My wife has a car, so I
It
have
fits the whole
cars. So
family, I imagine, too.
right, right. I can drive the whole family. Like I have the responsible cars, and even if, like if it came down to it, I would sell my motorcycle. If it came down to it, I'd sell my motorcycle, sell my other car, and sell both
Mhm.
my cars if that's what was required to do in order to get my family around. Like I wouldn't
Mhm.
be sitting there having my wife ride around on baloney skin tires so that I can
Right.
keep my ass on a motorcycle or a
Right.
sports car. Like it's just
Right.
not happening. So
Right. Well, if
I
we
mean,
go and
there
reflect
are
on the other shows that we see on the channel too, you've got the Duggars that literally had buses that could
Mhm.
take them here, there, and everywhere else that they had. They had, and then as the kids got older, some of them got their own cars and they started working in the car industry, flipping cars and whatnot. But they would take everybody in buses when they would travel anywhere. So they bought
right.
old school buses that they were getting rid of, trip them out so that there was room for everybody. And so they had the school bus. Okay, so we also have let's see. I can't think of the name of the show, but it's the Busbies where they had the quintuplets. They had one daughter and then they had quintuplets. So they got some specialized, big, extra long, extended vehicle to fit their whole family, so they could all go together too. And even Kate plus 8, Kate and Kate.
Right.
Before Kate plus 8, I can't remember the name of the show, but back then they had 8 kids, so 10 of them. They found a vehicle where the whole family could fit into it,
Right. Right.
and yet Cody has a convertible, 2-door
Yeah.
convertible
Yeah.
car, and a motorcycle. And the wives have to figure out how to get everybody in all the different places, and often how to get Cody in there too, unless he takes his one person, the special person who gets to ride with him. Well, I suppose he
Right.
had room
Right.
in the back seat for somebody too. I'm sure it wasn't very comfortable at all, but maybe a
Well, the
little one. I'm
kid.
sure it wasn't very safe either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, room in that car, that style of car, whether it's the Lexus, I think it was a 300 or Camaro, Audi,
Hmm.
Mustang. Those they have back seats, but they're back seats really for small adults
Hmm.
and children.
Yeah.
And they're not even then like for small adults and children. Those seats aren't built for comfort.
Yeah,
Like they're
they're
really
meant for
cargo
golf
spaces.
clubs, really.
Right. They're cargo spaces. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you can put stuff back there. Like I would feel more
Right.
comfortable putting stuff back there than putting like especially if you have a teenager. Like because then you put like the older kids in a position where they have to turn themselves so they're not riding safely in the vehicle.
Hmm.
So it's problematic. But Teresa Skinner actually had something to say. She said a lot of their financial problems also had to do with the frequent moves and bad choices with house rentals and purchases. And I 100% agree with this. Uh,
Yeah.
they should have hired a professional money manager. Yeah, if
Right.
you can't handle your dollars, there's no shame in that because a lot of people, even when you talk about like lottery winnings, thank you, Teresa. That was a good point. But when you talk about lottery winners, a lot of people who go win the lottery, you pray, oh, please, Lord, let me hit this lottery. I'll change my life. I promise you. But when you hit that lottery, the problem isn't the fact that you just have this money and you spend it poorly. It's just that you don't know how to spend it. You don't
Yeah.
know what to spend it on. You have this huge increase of income and you're not sure like what tax breaks to take. Like how like really when you're making that kind of money, the kind of money that Cody and the family was making, with all due respect to Janelle and her accounting skills, you
Hmm.
really need to hire not only an accountant, but you need to hire a financial planner,
Yeah.
somebody to help you with investments, where to
Yeah.
put your money, because with the level of money and income that you have, you don't want to just put that in a bank account. Like you actually want
Hmm.
to have several investments working for you so that way you're bringing money in. There's a lot of things that you want to have going.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, like the house rentals, like going out renting these big old houses when you don't, like, your bills aren't paid, like, because Danny made a good point. Danny Towns, she made a good point in saying that um, they had a lot of bills prior to being on the show. When you're making this kind of money, priority one should have been, we don't know how long this opportunity is going to last, because that's what this is. It's not a career, it's an opportunity.
Mhm.
We don't know how long this opportunity is going to last. So the first order of business, let's pay our bills off. Let's get everything paid off so we can start off flush. So we get fired and this show gets canceled. When we enter back into the world, we have everything that we want paid off, and we're in a good financial position. And then from there, you just build. And so, like they were saying, instead of going out renting these big, elaborate, big ass houses, buy a smaller house, like you would say to your kids when they're starting out. Don't try to go out and buy the mansion that you're going to live in at the end of your life. You're going to retire in. Buy a nice, reasonable starter home. Put that money down, make your payments, get the things going the way you want to go. It's a house. Forget cars. Stop investing in cars and jewelry. Jewelry, maybe you might be able to claim as an asset, but all cars are liabilities. You're losing money on cars whenever you buy a car. So for him to buy a car or a motorcycle, that's not an asset. You're losing money on it. Put that money on a house, put that money on property. So it's just basic things like that a financial planner or an accountant would tell you. But of course, you don't want an accountant or a financial planner, because then they would also tell you, yeah, you buy your girlfriend or your wife, your new wife, a bunch of stuff that she wants, those Christmas Carol statues and Dickens statues. Yeah. That's a bad investment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because even if they're valuable, like those paintings on the wall, they might be categorized as being worth tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But unless you can find somebody who's willing to spend that money and buy that stuff, it's not worth that. It's just a projected value.
Yeah. Mama Squirrel also said they still haven't paid off that Christmas village.
So lay away.
What's true about this too is, as you said, Janelle is only an accountant. That's just add, subtract, do the math kind of stuff. I don't think she had any say when it came to how that money would be divvied out. I think it was all Cody's control on, well, each wife will have so much, or, oh, we'll do this, or this we're going to vote on as a family because it's more of a family decision because it's more money. But in the end, Cody had complete control. So I think even if the show offered a financial planner to him for free, I bet he would have said, we don't need it. We're good. He doesn't want to be told what to do with his money. And he probably knows deep down inside they're not going to be happy with the choices that we've made so far. And they're going to tell us we have to cut back. We don't want to cut back. Life is short. Yeah, we deserve to have what we deserve to have. And I bet he wouldn't have listened to a lick of what any financial planner would have ever told him, which goes along with the notion that he didn't want to listen to what the therapist had to say too. Remember, he didn't want to go to therapy because he thought they're going to try to tell me that I'm the one that has to change.
Right.
If you know that going into it, maybe this is a reason you should be in therapy. It's like, I just don't want to hear it. La, 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 la. So I feel like he would have handled a financial planner the same way, unless the show thought it was a great idea and all wives were on board. And there's no way that Robyn would be on board, because right away the financial planner would be like, why does this chick keep getting everything paid for? And she's not bringing anything in. Like, they would have really tore that thing apart. So although a wonderful idea, whoever recommended they should have had it, you're absolutely right, they should have had it, but I don't think they ever would have, even if it was given to them for free.
Right. Well, because I mean, that part of it is that it's like having a nutritionist. Like, if you try to lose weight, you go hire a nutritionist. The nutritionist can make suggestions, but you have to do the diet. You can hire a trainer, but you have to do the exercise. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm a hired trainer and a nutritionist. That's why I like when people give like the people who do the Marvel movies or whatever a hard time. Like, oh, he was 180 pounds, now he's 250, solid muscle. And it's not fair because he's rich enough where he can hire chefs and hire nutritionists and trainers. Yeah, but at the end of the day, he still has to eat the food and or she has to do the work. So they have to show up to the gym at 3 o'clock in the morning, work out for 8 hours, take a 3 hour break, and then go back to the gym to do cardio. They're still doing it. It's just, they have it easier, yes, because they have help. But this, like you said, a financial planner would have put them so much further ahead. Here's the ironic part, though. Had they hired a financial planner, they might not have had 18 seasons. Because part of the disaster of reality shows is that they want to see you implode, especially financially. Like when you're doing really well, all of a sudden you have 8 houses. And if you look at it, and this is very cryptic, but if you look at the rise in elevation and the rapid decline of Janelle, this is why I'm so happy for her right now with getting this property, is that she went from starting out with the Lehigh house. I think that was her house, actually. I think her name was on the lease or on the mortgage or the deed. So she went from owning the Lehigh house to renting a property in Vegas to purchasing a home in Vegas, like on a cul-de-sac, to selling that home, then renting a house renting 2 houses in Arizona, to living in a trailer, to living in a student apartment, and then moving into a bigger apartment. And now she's got, obviously like this land, which is a dream for her. And I'm very happy for her. But, that's kind of the cycle of reality shows. That's what people tune into reality shows. That's why Real Housewives was so popular, because you had these women with the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Oh, I go out, I buy a $10,000 bag because that's just how I do it. I'll be popping tags. That's my life. And then that next, within a season or 2 seasons, that same lady is sitting on the couch crying or sitting on the steps crying because she about to get put out of her house because apparently her husband don't like paying taxes. You know what I mean? Or something to that degree. And I know that Bravo, because it's happened too many times, especially on Bravo, and it's happened too many times on TLC. I know that they know. I think that they have them go through their books. Like, I think they hire an accountant to go through their books to see what they're spending money on and what their bills are, what their debt is. They say, oh, these people are financial wrecks. So even no matter how much we pay them, they're going to blow it. They're going to blow it like a sailor on a holiday, and it'll be going. So,
these were, once they saw how Cody was spending money, I'm sure those producers were just encouraging them. You bought what? That's amazing. You're interested in getting what? That would be so cool. I'm sure they were just feeding
it. You get Robyn a house?
Yeah.
She don't need a 3-bedroom house. Robyn needs at least a 5-bedroom house. Yes. What about my other wives? I mean, oh well.
Yeah. I mean, she's still got the young ones, right? They don't have all the young ones.
Robyn's the young wife with the young kids, right?
Yes.
Those other kids are going to college. You're right about that one.
She's still working that business, isn't she? Oh my goodness. And then you work from home. I mean, is there a 6-bedroom house available?
Right. It's about to take off. And they, like the whole time, they're like, yeah, he's buying this. I don't understand. Oh, well. But so what was the other part of the there was a part of the chapter where Janelle had talked about the understanding of, or the importance of being on the show. And this is what I thought was kind of interesting, where she thought there was an important value of them being on the show because it exposed and it's expressing and explaining to people the different sex and the information that they can provide on the differences in the sex of polygamy and the difference between them and the LDS church versus the difference between them and other polygamous groups that may be doing things that are criminal. And she found value in that. And there was a point where, and this is kind of that common refrain from the Brown family, where they say, we just want to be accepted for who we are and our moral value. And she even goes on to say later on that her kids want to all move back to Utah because of their moral value, and people should just accept them for their morality and for who they are, instead of trying to put moral claims on them. Then at the same time, and this is kind of the both sides of the street application that all the Brown family members do. At the same time, she actively criticizes other people's morality or what she considers to be lack thereof. And I thought that was funny, because even as like on Sister Lives, we covered the them trying to go to the church and do the after school programs for the kids,
Uh-huh.
and how Christine and it was Janelle and Meri wanted to send the kids to the church to do the activities with other kids,
Mm-hmm.
and Christine and Robyn were completely against it
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want them to have that negative influence.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird to me. I say all that to say it's weird to me that the very people who demand that they are accepted for their moral judgment are now saying that they don't accept other people
Yeah.
because of their morality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
weird place for me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I thought that was the epitome of hypocrisy, which they never saw at all during
Mm-hmm.
that time. It's exactly as you say. Their whole platform is we're so persecuted. This is what we're touting and hanging our hat on when it comes to the theme of this show, is that we're so persecuted and we shouldn't be. We're just okay. We're just normal. We're like you. And everyone should accept us. And they did basically on the show. We saw over and over and over and over again, acceptance, 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 acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're given this opportunity to have their kids do something like, joining other youth. And well, that's not our church. They can't go. They can't have that kind of influence. They can't. It's a complete lack of trust in their children too. Or you could even say complete lack of trust in their own personal parenting skills, that they raise their kids enough.
Right.
First of all, you're not going into a dangerous situation, but let's just say for whatever reason, this particular Methodist church is a little culty also. Like maybe their youth group has got a sect in it that also does devil worshiping or something. I don't know, but they don't know anything about it. But you would trust your kids to go into that situation and go, that star I'm not familiar with. Wait a minute. I don't like this drinking of blood part. This does not seem to jive with what we've learned. And that they would discuss it amongst themselves and come home and discuss it amongst the parents too and say, I don't think this is for us and this is why. Not that that would have ever happened, but let's taking it to an extreme. So this is so mild compared to that. These are like people who essentially believe the same thing. They just don't believe in having multiple wives. Other than that, they have the same faith. And no. It's not our, it's not our, they're not us. We're not them. And yeah, it was just, it's kind of ridiculous, quite frankly. Upsetting to watch because it was so, I was surprised when watching that part of the show that Christine was part of that. It really did surprise me that she was really on board with absolute no. Now, Robyn was an absolute no, and I have a video that I already recorded. That's coming out soon. I'm sorry, y'all. I know I went another week without a video. So you got to keep catching the lives. But I do have a video that's recorded. I'm just working on editing it. Actually, more than one. So a couple are recorded, and they'll be coming out soon. But I have one on that scene actually talking about it and it as it relates to something else, but I've just recently looked at it again because of taking parts of a clip out of that and just watching it. It's just kind of disturbing to watch. And the communication in the family is ridiculously horrible. I mean, just ridiculously horrible. They weren't able to really express themselves. When Madison finally does and says, I don't like this, Cody challenges her, because it's like, that's not the opinion that I have. So like, why are you being so confrontational? And Janelle has to stand up for her and say, she's not, she's just saying her opinion. We want our kids to have opinions here, right? Or no? Because it seems like no. It seems like we're going to sit you all down and say we want your opinions, but we're going to tell you what our opinions are first, so that you side with us. And if you don't, we'll do what Cody says. Well, I guess we accomplished nothing. We'll just table this for another time. That's the end of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. Just why do I have to keep watching this scene? It's terrible. Yeah, that lack of communication. The interesting thing though is, surprisingly, I think the kids overcame that lack of communication that they were raised in. I feel like they do a really good job of expressing themselves. and sharing. And when they see something that they don't agree with in the family, that they'll let people in the family know, including adults, which Cody interprets as confronting authority. But like, they were able to develop opinions despite the fact
Right.
they did not have good models of communication at all in their family. There's a lot of talking going on. There's no doubt there's a lot of talking going on. But in terms of true communication and sharing and swapping of ideas and feelings and all that, and really listening to each other, that just didn't really happen in this family at all. So I want to give kudos to the kids, because whenever they're on, especially as they got older, and they would do couch interviews, and for the most part, there's always an outlier here and there, but for the most part, those kids are pretty well spoken and are able to share what they're thinking and what they're feeling about things in a way that's cohesive and that comes across that they really understand and know what they're saying. That's the other thing. Sometimes I feel like words come out of Cody, words come out of Christine that are just like a bunch of, definitely Robyn, that are just words because this is what we're supposed to say in this particular situation. And right. I don't know if it's Christine's defense or if it's just an explanation, probably of partly why Christine did it so much is she spent so many years being the AUB representative in the Voices of Reason, I think is the name of it, to that group. Right. And as part of that, they had media training that they went through. She learned, she knew what questions would come at them given the situation they were in. And they learned through media training how to answer that question, how to deflect a question, so this is something she was very comfortable and familiar with, which is probably why it's very difficult to watch her on TV, because I think her overall nature is to just share everything and say everything. Right. But yet she knows, because she's learned this other stuff. So that's why I think she's probably the most frustrating character to watch, especially in the end, because she's been sharing since season 1, episode 1, that she's not happy with the situation right now with 4 wives. Right. And yet it took until season 18 for her to actually leave, or 17, for her to actually leave. And even with leaving, she would still not completely be honest on certain things and still dance around certain issues. And I'd be like, stop it and just tell us what you really think. I don't get that with the kids. I for the most part, feel like the kids are pretty straight shooters.
Right. Well, let me give a big shout out to Teresa Skinner, 1999 super sticker. This is OP with the, I don't know if anybody else can see the super sticker, but it was amaze balls, amazing. So let me give her. So thank you, Teresa. Appreciate you. With something with regard that you said, the idea of you being able to trust your kids, like I think that is a huge conversation that needs to be had, especially as parents. And we talk about our kids going out. One of the greatest things you can give your kid is the confidence to be able to face and move in the world. And I think that when you hide your kid back from certain experiences or certain elements and you take away their choice, you don't give them the freedom and the ability to be able to make decisions. And so typically what happens is that you hide them back and hide them away from certain circumstances, situations, or people. And then by the time they encounter these people, they're out of your house, out of your purview, and outside of your supervision. So you don't have the opportunity to be able to put in your 2 cents or give your perspective on the things that they encounter when they run into these situations. So this is part of the reason why I think that it's detrimental when you try to hide your kids back. Or what I was listening to, especially talking on like Sister Wives, listening to the watching them saying, well, we don't want our kids around these certain other kind of kids because I don't want them to be influenced by these other religions or these other people. Then it challenges the fact that, years and years ago, I'm about to show my age a little bit. There was a debate on, I believe it was Donahue. I want to say Donahue. It was one of them talk shows. And they had a rap guy on, a guy named Chuck D, was the Public Enemy. And somebody stood up and said, well, with your music, which was ironic because he had a lot of positive music, like don't do this and go to school and learn stuff, and whatever, be all you can be. This was rap music was very positive. And he said, with all this killing and stuff that's talked about on the records, because this is when gangster rap first started coming out, can it make people do the wrong thing? And he said, look, if you send your kid to a movie, and if you have your kid their whole life and you've been raising them and training them and talking to them and dealing with them, and they go to an hour movie or they listen to a 5-minute song and it changes their entire perspective on life, then you failed as a parent. Like, you know what I mean? Like if they can listen to 5 minutes worth of music and they say, you know what, killing is okay, then there's some stuff that you missed. Like there's some talks that you should have had that you failed to have, and I think it's the same thing. Like you're depriving your kids that opportunity. Let them, I'm not saying let them go out and experiment with a bunch of stuff, but I'm saying like you want them to have the idea and knowledge on how to move throughout this world safely and securely, outside of your presence. Because the truth of the matter is, and this is the real part of it, is that even as I listened to Cody and Sister Wives do their sex talk, I think they had at least 3 episodes where they did it. One of the more disturbing things to me is you're talking to these kids like you're always going to be present. The truth of the matter is, and this is from the perspective of a man who was once a child, a teenage boy, the truth of the matter is that when young men talk to your daughter or the young girls, let's keep it all the way a stack. Them young girls, them loose and frequent ones, when they talk to your sons or your daughters, whatever, when they talk to them, you aren't going to be there. By design, you're not going to be there. You're not going to be there to give advice. So yeah, you sit down and have real talks with them, real conversations with them. Tell them what to expect, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality. Tell them what to expect. Tell them it feels good. Hell yeah. Wars have been fought over it, but there's a responsible way that you can approach it too. Like don't lie to them and tell them it's terrible and they're not going to like it. It's going to be horrible because when they find out the truth, they're not going to believe anything you say. So maintain your integrity with your expression, but you also want to give them the tools that they can make the best decisions for themselves, as opposed to relying on your ability to make the decisions for them. And that's kind of what that's kind of what I thought about with regard to them not trusting their kids. Like they have good kids. Because no matter what you say about their kids, like I know they recently had some issues with one of their children recently. I have to get into that too much, but like statistically, like with as many children they don't have any, young births. They don't have any like teen pregnancies. They don't have any incarcerations, as far as I know. Nobody's been arrested or incarcerated. These kids are well educated for the most part, so they haven't done a bad job. Like I'm not saying they did a bad job. I'm just saying that you really want to give them the tools to be able to operate the function.
Yeah, and it made no sense, James. Here are people led by, and I had this in the video that you'll eventually see. I pointed out too is the fact that Robyn led the force in getting all these kids into a public school. It said they were all going to public school because that's what Robyn's kids did. So we want all the kids to be together. So they're all going to go to a public school. They're all going to go to a public school, but they can't go to a youth group because of the influence that might be in that youth group. What do they think happens at my kids went to a public school. I went to a public high school. I went to a private school through 8th grade, and then I went to a public high school. And the public high school of the 3 sort of in the city was the roughest of them. There were a lot of fights. I had to walk around bloodied people to get down the hall. It wasn't the greatest thing. You could get certain classes. It's like, okay, back in the day when smoking, there was a lot of smoking just going on in general in the 80s, but there would be skunk smells in rooms. And it would just be it was an interesting public high school, especially coming from a parochial school from preschool through 8th grade. And my kids went to public high school all the way through. I'm very much aware. They share with me the things they saw on the school bus or that they saw in the schools and all of that. It's what grows kids into learning how to be discerning too. Right. So there were a lot of great things. As long as you put the foundations in your children to understand what's right from wrong, then you shouldn't fear them being in the presence of something that isn't right. Just like you say, that 5 minutes isn't going to turn them into a whole different person unless you didn't do your job initially. If they have the foundation built inside of them, they're going to be okay. I didn't walk down the hallway and see the guy with the bloody face flying across the hall and go, I want to hit somebody.
Right.
You know, it just doesn't work like that. Yeah. My kids ended up all graduating and they're all great kids.
Right.
Going through it. So it just is so shocking to me that she says, public schools, okay, great. Let's open them up to the world and learn a bunch of different things. But God forbid, go to a youth group. We don't want those influences. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's a complete contradiction of who she is. And it goes back to with her. Well, she jumped on the train of Christine. She probably would have said nothing because that's the MO of Robyn. I'm not giving my opinion at all unless I absolutely have to get my way, or I can jump on somebody else's bandwagon and help support them. So Christine was the first to speak up and say that she wasn't agreeing with it. And then Robyn went in hard about her faith and how important it was and how they're fighting for their faith. Why would we let them go to this group? And well, because you don't have a group. It's so obvious. Like, I mean, the drama of it all. And it goes back to we're so persecuted. And, you know, as a polygamous woman growing up this way, I know, and just having to share because the cameras were there, that this is important not to do this because, and completely unaware that she's contradicting herself in the other situation. It's just Robyn being Robyn in that particular moment. There's the camera, and I'm going to now give my platform about why the AUB faith is so important to me, lies, and share to the point of fake tears why these kids should not go to a youth group. Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. You can't make heads or tails of it, but you know, that's par for the course with Robyn Brown, isn't it?
Right. Well, because with that conversation, it came off kind of culty, like because there was the whole complaint that Robyn had in that situation was, I want my kids to be able to be polygamous too. Like we're fighting for our religion and our faith and our belief. Why would we send them to somebody else? So I want to keep my kids in this narrow perspective so that they only understand this so that they too will become polygamous. So at that point, it stops being a choice and it starts to be more indoctrination as opposed to anything else. You want to indoctrinate your kids into your faith, and having other influences prevents that indoctrination. One of the other things that they talked about was consistently throughout, and even in this chapter, Janelle talks about the idea of being normal and being perceived as quote unquote normal. The weird thing to me is that you feel like you're a part of a persecuted group who's being alienated from the rest of society. And because you're part of this persecuted group, you desire, you yearn, you beg to be a normal person because you're a normal person and you want to be perceived to be just like everybody else. And now your kids are presented with the opportunity where they can be just like everybody else. And you are standing in the way of them being able to experience that normalcy.
Yeah.
Because that's what it came down to. They would have been able to go to this group and they would fit in with the rest of it because they don't have wives and they don't have, sister wives and all that. Even though they're from a polygamous family, they aren't doing anything because they're too young. Well, they're really too young, but even in perspective of the show, they were too young. So they weren't married. They weren't engaged. They weren't promised to somebody else. So they wouldn't have been the subject. Again, I think that this is like that weird part too, where the parents are assuming that because they would have difficulty, and they have trouble moving through, their kids, they're putting their fears and their their weight, their baggage onto their children, where they don't. It's not their place to carry that. And I
Yeah.
think that exists too.
Yeah. Yeah. It talks more to who they are than it really does about the kids too, which is kind of sad. Speaking of Robyn, I found it interesting that Janelle shares about the couch interviews and how they expected the show to be a little bit more 19 Kids and Counting, where the couch interviews were very softball questions and everything was very innocent and sweet. And they thought their show would be that too. And it may have been if they wouldn't have asked questions that they were being honest about sharing. Like, I mean, I think that the Duggars were kind of all brainwashed into thinking and speaking in the same way, that they didn't really have conflict with each other at the time. Whereas these wives had a little bit more freedom and a little bit more ability to think on their own. So they had opinions. And so therefore they came out in these situations. But to know that during that period of time, when it came to the Robyn dress situation that we all know so well, I picked the dress scene, that it looks on the show, and it does, that Christine walks off and they're kind of like look concerned. And then it looks like it comes back up. So she was gone for a short period of time. Like I picture her going to the bathroom, being upset, wiping her face, you know, like getting a glass of water or something, and then coming back like 15 minutes later. She came back 3 days later.
Yeah.
3 days it took her to sit on that couch again and finish that conversation. Talk about hurt. And yet I don't think that Robyn really gets it. Janelle said that it was a mess after that session. It took them a while to heal from that situation. And then she goes on to talk about how Robyn is usually instrumental during particularly difficult situations on the couches. And she said that we allow her to be the mediator afterwards, and that we all have to talk it out and have a healing process before we're allowed to leave the room. And we've settled whatever troubling topic our producer had asked us to talk about. And I just thought, here we are with Robyn being controlling again. It's the same thing with like Robyn speaking Cody. She just needs to get into the middle of it. She needs to control the narrative. And so by her being the person to say who gets to talk and who gets to say what, and her interpreting what they say, etc., means she is the puppet master at deciding how this is going to look in the very end, after we're done with this whole conversation. Who's going to shine at the end? Who's not going to shine? Or who's going to have to forgive somebody else? And I just find it interesting that I wonder, she didn't specifically say she did it in this situation, because after the situation, she said Robyn is usually instrumental after a particularly difficult couch session. So by usually makes me wonder if she was of no help in this situation because she was so deeply involved in it. So there's absolutely nothing she could say to remedy it. But I just found it interesting. Janelle was so kind about saying what a great job Robyn does to help me. Just like she likes to mediate, she just needs to be involved in everything. So she knows all, because knowledge is power in that family. She knows all that's going around. And she can control the narrative of how it's going to look, including going back to other conversations when a wife is having a difficult time with Cody just one-on-one, that she wants to be inserted in that too, to be the mediator in those situations. The more you go through this and read it over again and watch the shows again, you just really can see Robyn's fingers in everything right from the beginning, things that just slip by the first time that you watch it. But knowing who she is now and knowing how she works, you can see it from the get-go that she was working from day one to have herself come out on top. She was definitely in control of this family. Cody wasn't. She was.
Right. Well, I think that there was because I think when they wrote the book, that shout out that Janelle was given was more or less an olive branch that she reached out to, Robyn, trying to be a good teammate, trying to be a good team player, Robyn does a lot. She really helps the family and she helps to mediate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like you said, there's a lot of advantage in being the person who all the information flows through. The conduit for which all the information flows through, because then you get to select what we talk about and how we deal with it. So, I mean, I think that that's in there as well. One of the things that Janelle had mentioned throughout this chapter was her belief that the Brown family's involvement with the TV show, the reality show, it was going to be very surface level. That's the term that she used to describe it. She thought that her conversations and everything that they were going to talk about was going to be extremely surface level. They weren't going to really get into the meat and bones of their situation. And she even cites other television shows like 19 Kids and Counting and other TLC shows as her basis of why she thought that her show was going to be a little different. And one of the challenges that I think that, because she wasn't the only wife to mention this, and I think Cody even said it, one of the challenges that they have is that you guys are different. Like with 19 and Counting, the reality of it is the draw for most people in watching that show is a traditional type relationship, but the only thing that's a little odd for most people is the fact that they have so many kids.
Yeah.
Like you have a ton of kids. How do you do it? So it's a little like they have an avenue where that show can be a lot more surface level, because I have an understanding what it's like to be in a monogamous relationship. I have an understanding what it's like to be in a monogamous relationship with children. I don't know what it's like to be in a monogamous relationship with a bunch of kids, but I can imagine, which is why I choose not to do it. So I'm coming at it from a different place. Whereas with polygamy, yes, there's going to be things that you're going to have to answer, because she goes on to describe later on in the chapter, as she describes how they were off put because they thought that the show was going to be extremely surface level, and they were kind of put off because there were so many questions which they considered to be salacious. Like people were asking them about sexual appetites and things of that nature. There was something she makes mention that there was a reporter who had asked the question about specific sexuality, and the publicist stood up and said, "You wouldn't ask that question of somebody else or one of the other reality stars." No, they wouldn't, because at the end of the day, people are curious about polygamy and how it works. What's the ins and outs? How do you share with the wives? Do the wives all jump in together, or is it one-on-one time, and who gets what and when and how often? So those are questions. So it kind of falls on the people who are going to participate in this show. And I don't want to say blame the victim, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you participate in this type of show, you have to recognize where you are and what you're bringing to the table. And by doing that, you also recognize the fact that, yeah, people are going to ask you some wild stuff about what you do and what you don't do. It's just part of the thing. But do you recall that portion of the chapter?
Yeah, I do. I think I actually had it just opened up here a second ago. I was looking through that.
It's on 228. They said when people hear the word polygamy, their mind often jumps to salacious conclusions. For some reason, many intellectual Americans cannot differentiate between a healthy polygamous family and a man cheating on his wife. And she goes on from there.
Yeah, I actually wrote in the margin, for many reasons, many intellectual Americans, this should not be. I found it funny that she wrote, for some reason, intellectual people even have a hard time differentiate between polygamy and a man cheating on his wife, or even a harem. And I'm like, okay, again, not raised in Utah over here. So I think it's justifiable. I found it funny that she wrote for whatever reason. I'm like, I get that now after following the show all these years, now after following the family, yes. And now society in general, and with the popularity of the show, yeah, it would be a little bit more shocking if people couldn't understand the difference between it and just society in general. We have all kinds of different looking relationships out there. Like, it's just very different. So than it was back in that time. But I just wrote, justifiably and for many reasons, I think it is that people are going to ask these questions. I mean, they obviously had to be prepared and know they're going to come. I don't know the exact question they were asked, because I found it interesting that she took the angle of the producer being offended and saying, you would never ask these questions to a normal, so why would you ask them? And I thought, well, because as you mentioned before, there's nothing salacious about that. We all understand that. We don't understand you. So this shouldn't be too shocking that this question is going to come your way. I mean, she didn't even push it too far in terms of asking if there were relationships between the wives on the side, like that I could even see too. Like, oh, okay, well, does Cody get in with two wives at a given time, or do the wives on their own sometimes meet without Cody? Like, I mean, I could see it going even further than just the basic kind of tell us how this all works. So I would have been surprised if they didn't come prepared with a set answer of and they kind of did say in the end they addressed it somewhat by just by Meri basically saying, we don't go weird and leaving it at that, and not going into details after that. But yeah, I just felt it was another one of those examples that there are so many of in the book where they get surprised by how people are reacting to certain things, whether it's positive or negative. Like, I'm just the surprise surprises me. I thought that was something that should just happen. And she goes on to say that she understands that people want to know about their private lives, and that, but then she says everyone wants to find something scandalous out of something pure. And I just remember thinking, well, what I think, because I wrote in not me, I'm just curious. She goes on to say, I hope that the show is firmly blah, 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 blah. None of us want to know what goes on between Cody and another wife in their private time. I think they actually all want to know what goes on between Cody and I think they each want to know what's happening. They'll never ask. But I am certainly Robyn. I am certain that Robyn is trying to be top wife in the bedroom, and that she wants to know what goes down in the other three bedrooms so she can just one up. If she's smart, she would just one up them too and not have to go any further than that. But the notion that everybody wants to make it scandalous. Well, I agree that the television networks all want to make it scandalous. And I agree that that brings in a lot of viewers. But I wouldn't say all viewers bring that in. I had a general curiosity. Like, how does it work? Does anyone mix and match and all that? No, they don't. Okay, move on. I just found the whole lifestyle fascinating to me. So I don't think everybody wanted it to turn into, I think it would have made me uncomfortable if we really started getting into the nitty gritty of what happened with all of them in the different rooms. Because I was more interested in the family functioning together. Eventually it turned into being more interested in the relationships, just because as they started to fall apart, that took on a whole different interesting. It wasn't the salacious sexual part of their relationships that I was interested in as much as now it's falling apart and why and who's doing what and where's the responsibility fall. And that was more interesting to me. So I wrote, I mean, I kind of like, I agree to disagree, but then also kind of agree. It's another one of those situations where I'm going to take this stand, but then I'm going to contradict myself, and then I'm going to contradict my contradiction.
Right. No, I get it. I think that deep down there's always going to be a question of how weird art thou? Like, I think that that's always kind of going to be in the mix. I disagree wholeheartedly with the idea that all of a sudden somebody's trying to take something pure and make it salacious. On the surface, there is a point where when somebody gets accused of a crime, for instance, see, or some wrongdoing, one of the first things they always say is, well, you know me. You know I would never do that. And the truth of the matter is most people don't know. Yeah, they don't know that you would never do that. So when she says take something pure, that would mean that I understand that you're a pure, perfect person and that you would never do this. But now I'm trying to put this thing that you would never do onto you. I don't know. Because when we talk about these types of relationships, and really what we're talking about is alternative lifestyles. When we talk about alternative lifestyles, there are people who are into different, activities when it comes to bedroom shenanigans or fun or whatever you want to call it. They're into different things, and one person's normal is another person's free. You know, it's you think that this is something I'm into. This is my particular kink, and this is what I like. This is what gets me off. And if you tell somebody that, some people be like, "Oh, that's nothing. What are you talking about? You said that like that's weird." You tell another person, and they're like, "Oh my God, how do you sleep at night?" You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it is. So it's not like to say that these smart intellectual people have these questions about where we are as far as what we do in the bedroom. It's not that they're not smart. These are intellectual questions. Yeah. It's not irrational for me to ask somebody who's living an alternative lifestyle that's different from my own, or maybe I'm not familiar with. Well, how does this work? Because, as I'm sure they would all agree, what you do in the bedroom is a big part of your romantic relationship with your husband and those other women. And whether you choose to see it or not see it, it's a reality. And it's also a little contradictory for you to say that I support polygamy, I believe in polygamy, I support sister wives, I love the idea, the concept of this big, huge family. However, I never want to see my husband being another husband to another woman. But I support my husband having other wives. Like, that's, to me, that just doesn't sound, it doesn't ring 100% true. Like, in my mind, you should be, maybe I'm more in camp, I forget that. Every time I forget this dude's name. The one family, not the Duggars, the Darger family. Maybe I'm Camp Darger. Like, if I had a bunch of wives, I would want all my wives to get along to the point where they could see me kiss a wife or comfort a wife if something were going on without them getting jealous and upset. Because if we're all one family, we should be able to exist as one family. And if I couldn't exist in that way, which I don't think I could, which is also another reason as to why I don't do this, if I couldn't exist in that thing, I wouldn't want to participate. Like, if I had to hide a relationship, this conversation, it seems like I had with my daughter not too long ago. Like, if you can't be honest with who you're dating, or they can't be honest about dating you, just as something that, I went through as a young person, if you can't be honest about who you're dating or who's dating you or what your relationship is, it will damage your relationship. And if you can't be honest that you love your wife and you want to show affection to your wife, even if it's in the presence of your other wife, then you can't tell me that doesn't have damage to your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that is a major component of marriage. Like, it's kind of the defining thing. Besides living in a home together, this is the other act that happens in this union that we have. And you're saying you have 4 of them. How bizarre is that? So clearly it's going to have to come out on the table, and you're going to have to just lay it out for us. How does this all work?
Right. How does it work? And then it's weird because, and this is one of the things I take a little umbrage with as well, is that I can't come out and say, I want to explain to you what my life and lifestyle is. And then when you start to ask me questions about my lifestyle, I get offended that you're asking me questions. Like, if I want to keep, like, I don't jump on and talk about what happens in my bedroom because I don't want to talk about it. So therefore, I'm not going to talk about it. You know what I mean? But if I say, yeah, this is what happens, and this is how I do it. This is how I get down. I can't be upset when somebody else jumps on there and makes a comment about it. You know what I mean? If it's out there, it's open forum. Like, it's open for discussion. And if you present something, that's it's open for discussion. So, I mean, I can see where people could, in saying that, I'm kind of like, what you doing? In saying that, I can also see where people may go too far and ask things that are completely inappropriate. I'm not saying that everything is on the, everything should be on the spit to be discussed, but you got to
Yeah.
be a little more,
Yeah.
be a little more understanding. You can't be super conservative.
Yeah,
I'll talk
you got to
about
be
this.
really naive to think that that is something that's just off the table. It's just ridiculous.
Right.
On that
You
same
can't talk about
page
my
further
business. Like,
down.
oh, they don't talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It will
Further
be
down,
discussed.
we get another
Oh,
situation
what the hell?
on that page further down.
I'm getting all kinds of feedback.
How are you?
My computer said didn't get that. You care to try again? Because I think it thought I had a question. And I'm like, what?
Oh, AI. It's not all what it's cracked up to be.
No. This damn technology is going to get us.
Do you notice sometimes I'll put in the computer now on Chrome. I don't know if all the browsers do it, but on Chrome, when you type in any kind of question in that, instantly their AI generated response comes up worse than Wikipedia. I mean, it is so bad. It would and I would at first discovered it when I would type in questions about like, what episode was this or how old was this brown child? Because it would usually be sister wife related that I would put in there. It would be so far off. It would say something like Robyn Brown is currently 53 years old and Cody Brown is 24. I'm like, I'm like, come on. I'm like, it's so far off these answers. And I'm like, AI has got a ways to go. I don't think we have to worry about taking over the world just yet.
Or the scary part is it might be like an overpowered toddler.
Yes.
If anything, I'm more scared of that. Like it doesn't understand things, just like breaking stuff.
Yes, that's exactly.
What is this? Bransbury said one journalist asked Cody if polygamy was his way to be promiscuous, and I think those are the kind of hard hitting questions we wanted to see if they are putting themselves out there. And that's a fair, like I would think that that's a fair question. I mean, it comes off a little rough. Granted, is this your way of sleeping with a bunch of women and getting away with it? It comes off kind of rough. I get that, but at the same time, that is the intellectual discussion that has to be had when you're talking about having multiple wives, which would not just, especially if you're limiting to the physical. It's not just an emotional outlet. There's also the reality of it being several sexual outlets that are available for one person, for one man. And the question, of course, would be, like you said, does the sexual outlet, is it limited only to your time? He has 4 options, according to him, because he has 4 wives. He has 4 options. Yeah. And this would be the question, for the wives. In real life, we understand, because we're not living in like the X-rated movie world. In real life, we understand that women have needs as well. So if your husband is meeting his needs, and clearly his needs are being met because he has 4 opportunities to do so, how are your needs being met? Especially if he's working it out properly with one wife, he's not exactly going to have enough fuel in the tank to take care of 3 additional women. The way he needs to be taking care of those 3 additional women. Like, you might be able to give a little here and a little there, but you're not, turning them out the way you should be, or it could be, So that is a question that people would have, and that's what I would expect people to have. If I was a polygamous man and I was doing this, and I came out on a reality show, I would expect to have that conversation. Yeah. Like you said about Christine being prepared for the conversation and the questions you're going to be asked. That would be one of the questions I would be prepared to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They should have had that in the can memorized and not even blinked, just answered it and moved on. But
right. Yeah. Whether it's orange juice or vitamin D, like you got to have something in the tank. You got to be working with something, because.
James, I found interesting in this chapter the part where she made it clear that, because this was a hypothesis that I had, conspiracy theory, that TLC was not involved at all in the decision for them to move down to Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, very clear. She reiterated over and over again. They did not even tell any of the producers on the show. They didn't tell any coworkers, any friends. They didn't tell the children to the very last minute, the teenagers a little bit before. She said they told TLC shortly before they moved. We obviously, she wrote, had a production schedule lined up, and this was going to be a huge change in those plans. And we weren't really sure that they would continue the show. But we had made our minds up as a family that it was the best thing for us to move out of state. So she made it seem like there's no bones about it. And I trust what Janelle says in her chapters, that it really wasn't, production didn't encourage them or push them on or suggest it. And I always thought they did, because it would just make it more exciting on their part, that it clearly was all of their decisions altogether, which I will admit shocks me. Because one, again, it confirms the fact that they irrationally were all freaked out over the given situation. And two, they were willing to put the TLC money show on the line for this move, because they didn't know if TLC would follow them out. They would be like, we're not taking a crew all the way down to Vegas. We don't have a crew there. This crew is based out of Utah and Wyoming or wherever. And so it's not going to go with you. And so therefore, maybe we'll in a couple seasons get another crew go. It could have just been a situation where they're like, it's not going to work for us.
Right. Right.
But obviously they saw the value in following them, because the road trip in and of itself was worth all the television. Just made it. Can you imagine how frustrated the producers had to have been following them and stopping and doing like an 18-hour trip to go 2 miles?
Right.
And just waiting in their cars, and oh my gosh.
Like the producers were probably excited. The film crew was probably horrified.
Oh, yes, yes. They were just like,
terrible.
when are we going to eat again? We have to follow the Browns. When the Browns eat, we'll eat. Well, the kids have to eat soon, right? Well, not according to Cody, they don't.
Right. They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Just keep going.
Right. But there was a point where I think that, because I always held out that, like looking at Cody's response to Janelle with regard to doing the show, I firmly believe that at this point, especially because they were doing so many on-air interviews with a lot of the big name shows like Good Morning America, the Today Show, the Joy Behar Show, they were just all over the place doing press releases and things. And even Janelle, she talks about like, we got to travel as a family, and it was so exciting that we got to do all these things. That I really believe that Cody was under the impression that if he would have moved, like for instance, if he would have moved to Wyoming, which would have put them closer to an AUB outlet, so they would have had that for themselves and for their kids. They would have had a community built in for themselves and for their kids. Instead, they decided to move to Las Vegas, which would have been more of a hub for them to be able to get picked up by a different television show or a different network. Even if TLC would have dropped them, they have felt like they were in a position that they would have got picked up by somebody else. In addition, they also had the bestseller money from this, like when they were moving to like doing the book deals. Oftentimes when you get a book deal, especially lucrative ones, they'll give you an advance on the book deal, so you'll have money already before you sell one copy of a book. Like you have promised money just so that you're committed to them to write a book for this publishing company. So I think that they had that, and that's also some of the money I think they moved to Vegas on. But they had those things in place. So I think that the move wasn't as happenstance as she's portraying it. I think that there were people who believed that they had other options and outlets. However, like you, I think that it was misplaced. Like, I don't think that it was a good, like, I mean, obviously turned into a good decision for them. But if you would ask me, I'd be like, no, this is a mistake. Like,
Hmm.
or the reasons why, I'll say this, the reasons why you're giving don't make sense.
Hmm.
And these are intellectually challenging reasons. Like, speaking of her logic, these reasons are illogical. Like,
Yeah.
if Utah is going to arrest us, like I said before, if they want to arrest us, if you're on Facebook, like I watch people all the time, especially early on, they will go out and they will commit crimes and be doing things on social media, and then
Hmm.
they would be surprised they get arrested.
Hmm.
That's all they need. The authorities don't need like the investigation is Exhibit A is your social media account. In this case, Exhibit A would have been the TLC show. They don't
Yeah.
need you to shoot 5 seasons of the show. They don't.
Right.
They got you after episode 1. You're done
Right.
data. I can't get on TV and be like, yeah, I do illegal gambling on my YouTube page, and I use that
Hmm.
to launder money. And if
Yeah.
I did that, the IRS is showing up to my house. They don't need to see 5 seasons of that.
Right.
They have everything they need. So the idea that you move because you're afraid of the law doesn't make a lot of sense, unless, of course, and this is the weird part about it, unless, of course, you're tacitly admitting that you are committing crimes and
Mm-hmm.
that the crimes you're committing could be prosecutable by
Mm.
Utah. So therefore you have to move. And that's the weird part. Like that's where it
Yeah.
gets a little weird.
Could there have been some sort of tax evasion or
Right, right.
filing of this or government money for food stamp? Or yeah, could there have been something involved in all of that that wasn't on the up and up? Cody knew it. And so he's like, we have got to get out of here. That's the
Yeah.
only thing that makes sense to me, that they knew they were doing
Before they
something.
uncover this rock, we need to
Mhm.
be out of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
they open this box, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. It really is, because to
Mhm.
cite the 1950s cases and your parents' generation telling stories of days gone by as the reason that you're going to move. No, you're not moving till the end of December, and the show premiered in September. And they said that it was
Right.
launched at the, first episode of the show. They launched an investigation where you went 3 months without making a move, and then suddenly
Right.
there's this rush that it has to be done within the week. It's just something's amiss. We don't have all the information, and that would be the one piece of information that would fit in there. They realized, well, wait a second, they don't care about us as polygamists. They caught wind of the fact they were looking into financials or something else that would fall under breaking of other laws. And therefore they decided,
Right.
let's just pick up and go and let them focus on somebody else. That could
Right.
be.
And that actually makes sense because as the DA district attorney from Utah said that we don't prosecute polygamy as a standalone crime. Usually it's in tandem to another offense. So
Mhm.
if they, we're doing this welfare thing, and
Mhm.
I don't want to get prosecuted for polygamy, that could be their way of saying we're doing some other stuff, and we'll get arrested for the other stuff we're doing, but you're
Yeah.
probably going to talk about the polygamy stuff, and
Yeah.
the thing that you're going to know about for sure is the polygamy stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think about? Because as we were talking about it, something occurred to me. Do you think that there's a possibility? And this just occurred to me just now, so it's not really well grounded or thought
Mhm.
out. But do you think that there's a possibility that the Brown family actually had another opportunity that just never came to fruition? Because sometimes, I've been involved with certain things, and there's an opportunity that's presented to you, and like it seems like everything is moving forward, and then at the last minute something doesn't work out, or contracts get changed, and you decide not to move forward, or they decide not to move forward with the
Mhm.
prospect of this opportunity.
Mhm.
If something like that were to happen, like the Brown family got invited out to Vegas and they were going to try to tie them into a different show or a different network or a different opportunity, and that opportunity fell through, that would be something that they would never bring up on the show. And it would be
Right.
something that they would never talk about, but it would be another reason as to why they went out to Vegas in the first place. Do you think that
I
that's a
love a good
possibility?
conspiracy theory.
Right, right,
I mean, it's very possible because the whole thing is fishy and makes no sense. I mean,
right,
there is another backstory. So in terms of a conspiracy,
right.
there is a conspiracy of some sort because what they showed us made absolutely no sense. They're not that dumb.
Hmm.
They wouldn't hurt their kids in that way if there wasn't a significant reason. So either they knew they were doing something criminally wrong that was going to be unearthed, that was going to affect them and in terms of going to jail and also ending the show, or as you said, there was another possibility in Vegas for a spin-off or another opportunity that looked even better. And then in the end, it
Mm,
didn't work out because the TLC, so it would have been like another network that approached
right,
them, a big, an ABC or something like that. That's like, oh, okay, but we think, or Netflix or something that's gonna give them a huge paycheck. That they thought, yeah, we'll do that because we're just going year to year on this contract right now. So we'll
right,
move down there, and we have a good reason to because of the investigation 3 months ago that was launched.
right, right.
So, but it would be sad if that were true. It would be really sad if that were true.
Hmm.
I find it hard to believe that the wives would all get on board with that because of the effect that it had on the kids. But maybe they just
Well,
thought they would get over it and they're young enough. Like the bigger move was the Flagstaff move. That was the more
right.
impactful one. But those older kids, they had a rough time, especially Meri. Meri only had Leon. So if
Hmm.
she knew that they were just going for like another television promotion opportunity, I can't see her being on board, but I could see Cody being approached about another opportunity and him not sharing it with all his wives, maybe Robyn, but they didn't know about
Right,
it. But then he was pushing this agenda, knowing their paranoia anyway that they had, that like, yeah, we got to go. That I could see happening, and Robyn
right.
jumping on board with it. Also being like, wait, let's not go until Tuesday. We don't have to leave on
Right.
Monday because there really is no threat of persecution here. And I can't get
Well, she
all
wanted
past
to have
until Tuesday. So,
right. Well, she wanted to have Dayton's birthday on Sunday because his birthday was that Sunday,
right,
and
right.
she wanted to have his party, and so she didn't want to have his party and then have to leave the next morning. So they
Mm-hmm.
pushed it off. They wanted to push it off to Tuesday. The only thing that really hits me is that the only reason I say that is because if there's an opportunity that they have, or even better yet, there's a possibility because maybe they heard somewhere down the line that they might be losing the show. And if they lost the show, there's a better possibility for them to get picked up in a hub like Las Vegas or even Los Angeles, as far as a production team, than for them to get picked up in Utah, like
Yeah.
by another production company,
Mm-hmm.
or another network. So
Yeah.
maybe he wanted to make his family more available and
Okay.
more attractive for another
Mm-hmm.
production team. Because one of the challenges is always making sure that you have the personnel who is available to film the show. And if Utah only has one or two families that are filming in the area, so you might have a very small contingent of uh, like actual cameramen, sound guys, makeup people, and so on and so forth, production folks. So if they're already filming, even if there's like one or two shows that are already filming, if they don't have a huge hub where there's a bunch of people who are available, if your show isn't popular, like if your show isn't killing it, like the 19 and counting show, then
Mm-hmm.
your show gets bumped. And so maybe they wanted to put themselves in a better position. I'm not sure. See, and the weird part is, I'm kind of in the camp where I would hope that the opportunity, if I'm right, I would hope that the opportunity is so good that it would make you say, you know what, I'm willing to make my kids uncomfortable
Yeah.
because this opportunity right here could
Mm-hmm.
change their lives. And
Yeah.
this opportunity right here could set them up in a way that, even beyond the sister wife show, is going to
Yeah.
set them up to a better life and lifestyle. I
Yeah.
would hope that maybe that's me being a little more generous
Yeah.
to them than I should be. But I would hope that it was something, because the reason they gave, like, I'm scared that the cops are going to show up and arrest us. So I'm going to traumatize the hell out of my kids. Like, that's, to me, like, It's crazy. That's
It
crazy as
makes
hell.
no sense. It makes
Right.
absolutely no sense. The more I watch it, the more the lack of sense it makes. The more things I
Right.
see that I just go, what? I don't understand it. But what you're saying, that could make sense. I know I moved my kids when they were going into fifth, third, and my son was still in preschool. He was going in a second year of preschool. So he wasn't affected. But fifth and third grade, we moved to a new school district. We bought a house in a different school district and moved, partly because the school district was much better. And we were growing out of our house anyway. So we really kind of needed to move. So we moved in. My second daughter, they seemed fine on the surface, but my second daughter, I was finding all these poems and songs she was writing, my third grader, that were really tragic. It's like, oh, I'm so torn apart. And I like approach her with, it was the most bizarre thing. I'm like, do I need to get her in therapy? Like, it was so bizarre because she never shared any of that with me. And I'm like, are you okay about this move? She's like, I go, you know, you're going to meet new friends, right? Yeah. You know, you're still going to be friends with your other friends, and mom's still friends with, you know, Sydney's mom. So we're still going to get together. And yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then finally I approached her once. I go, oh, you know, I found this on the floor, Gracie. What is this?
Right.
You know, and she's like, oh, I was just writing. And I go, you sound so sad. And she goes, I don't know. Maybe that night I was, but I'm okay. So you also realize, you know, kids are kids, and emotions come, and they're not the same as adults. And I learned to just let it go, and she was perfectly fine. She doesn't even remember it now. I tell her that story. She has no recollection of it. I hope I kept them. I'm praying that in like the box of all their paraphernalia and stuff, those notes are in there so she can look and see in the event she's in a situation like that. I'm like, this is what you wrote about moving. But that was I obviously was concerned about moving because I knew that they would be leaving their friends, but I also intellectually knew this is going to be better for them. This other district had more opportunities. The house was going to have more space and room. The kids could have their own bedrooms. They're going to get a better overall education. Their likelihood to getting into college and scholarship money is going to be better in the long run. So as parents, you make those decisions that like, yeah, we're going to move, and it might be a little bit tough. And that was tough for me without them ever expressing it. They were all kind of like, okay. And of course, we presented it in such a positive light. Here's all the great things. We're only going to be 10 miles away from where we were before. We can still see, you know, we on and on and on and on. We had it all prepared. We made it all fun. Let's go the first night and have a camp out because the furniture won't be there. You know, we'll take our sleeping bags and all sleep on the living room floor together. Won't that be fun? We'll just get McDonald's because we won't have anything working it out, you know, and we just turned it into like a big party, and you know, let's go on our own to visit the school and walk around and get all the things you think you would normally do. They handled it 180 different. I mean, it was sort of like, not going to tell you to the last minute. You can tell nobody, and we're all going to be running around like chickens with our heads cut off, screaming at each other as it's all going down, to the point that the kids are crying. Like, it just, there's got to be a reason behind that other than they're all complete idiots. And I don't believe they all are. Some are, but I don't think they all are. So there's something under the surface. It'd be great if someday we know. We'll have to do a live the day it's revealed why they actually moved.
What the purpose was.
Yes,
well, I'm sure you didn't move your kids. Right, and I'm sure you didn't move your kids in the middle of the school year. So, I mean, there's that too. So.
No, of course not. If we didn't find a house that summer that could close in August before the school year began, we would have waited another year. I mean, it took us 2 years to find it as it was. Like, we didn't find anything early on that spring into the beginning of summer. And so, like, no, next year we'll look again. We would have never moved them in the middle of the school year. Not for unreasonable reasons. Some people have to. There's military families that are moving around. There are situations that, you know, husbands get transferred now. Yeah. You have to do what you have to do. They didn't have to do this.
Right. Well, I mean, even then, you don't tell them like, yeah, by the way, you can't tell nobody that we're leaving until we're gone. And then, you know, it's almost they were about 2 steps off of saying, yeah, by the way, even after we move, you can't contact anybody. Like once we're going, you can't call your friends or whatever and tell them how we're going. You know, where we're at, what we're doing, that kind of thing. No contact. So it was just a weird situation overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like I wasn't a huge fan of the move or the reason why that they provided, which is why I'm trying to come up with other reasons that would make sense to me because I'm trying to make sense of the whole situation. And that's where I came up with the idea that maybe there was another opportunity. And even as somebody had mentioned, the AUB wasn't thrilled. Julianne Kinkle, the AUB wasn't thrilled, and we had heard that before that the AUB wasn't thrilled about them doing the show necessarily, or parts or factions within the organization that didn't like it. Some of them were okay. So, from what I understand, some of the leadership was okay with Cody and them shooting the show, but there were parts or factions within the AUB that didn't like it. Then, of course, there was the the fact that it was like the Cody and Robyn show, like that was something I had presented before. That could have been it too. Like it was supposed to be Cody and Robyn take Vegas, and this would have been an opportunity for them to not only embrace their relationship, but maybe even get a little separation between them and the wives by moving to a different location because they technically were starting all over. So it just like the story as it's laid out doesn't make sense to me. And they said that they were talking to attorneys. And if you're talking to an attorney, I think it would be like borderline malpractice if they didn't mention, if they want you, they got you. Like, so at this point, it's just pretty much up to the district attorney whether he wants to file paperwork or not and go through with the dance because they already have you. They have self-admissions. Like Cody's on screen, talk about, I have 4 wives. And when God gives you 3 wives, he rewards you with more wives. And now I met Robyn and I'm going to date her. And then I'll watch you get married to another woman on screen. So they got you. If they want you, they got you. It's not even an investigation. What are we investigating? That's a waste of tax dollars. Like if anything, the DA wouldn't be in trouble with me because he didn't prosecute him. You'd be in trouble with me because if you're investigating them, I would want to know what you're investigating because you already got them. You got them, So that's a little weird. In the chapter though, Janelle did talk about how she was exposed to different types of people in Utah.
Yeah.
And how rich the culture was in Utah, apparently. And this is something that I didn't know, in fairness. I never would have assumed that Utah was so rich as far as like cultural diversity, ethnic and racial diversity, and all that. Maybe religious diversity. I don't know how much so, though, if half the state is one religion.
Right. And that religion doesn't look fondly on Black people.
Right.
I
don't know.
50% of the state.
Right. He's a little humble to me, but hey, who am I to judge? So I mean, I thought that was interesting. I'll take a word for it. Like maybe it's diverse to her, but then she moves to Vegas and she talks about like how amazing and how diverse it is and how there's so many opportunities because there's so many different types of people in Vegas. Now that I believe that you will encounter different types of people with different moral standings, and the again, it goes back to the conflict that they were having in moving to Vegas because of the diversity in ethics, like the ethical diversity that they would be encountering. And I think that it's like, again, I just think it comes down to level and relativism. So you're the people that you hang out with in Utah, you guys may have similar values. We talk about that in a second, but you may have similar values. But you get to Vegas and you're encountering people who may have similar values, which is ironic. These people may have similar values as well. It's just that they have a different religion. And just to kind of cap that, when we talk about, like, because I always thought it was funny that, the Brown family would talk about like this conservative, almost, I have this puritanical view of sex and sexuality, and the rest of the world is a bunch of freaks, and and they're nasty folks who are just so, basic degenerates or whatever, sexual degenerates. But if you're familiar with any of the statistics that comes out of Utah with regard to pornography or porn, as they say on YouTube, uh, quoted off of Google, it says recent data suggests Utahns view prawn as at comparable rates to residents in other states, with 85% of men and 75% of endorsing women endorsing having viewed prawn in their lifetime. So 85%, 75%. I think a big thing for them is like the like, I know it's a weird subsection of the whole industry that they watch, and I didn't want to dig too deep into it, but I know it's like I know they watch like a weird like family stuff, or like wicked stepmom, or the nasty nurse, or the nasty teacher stuff. Like they watch a lot of that, and like the milky stuff. So it's weird to me that, like, in one sense, they come off like we're the pure people and everybody's trying to put salacious stuff on us. But if I'm judging you by the place that you're from, you guys are freaks on the leash. Like, you guys like a lot of weird stuff as far as like some of the industry places reporting goes. Like when they report back, because all of them, nothing on the internet is secret, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
There is no autonomy. They keep records. They know when you go visit sites and stuff, they know that you visited the site. It feel like you're doing it by yourself in the room all alone, but you are not alone. So they keep data and information on that. So they report back that Utah is like one of the more freakier places.
That's
in the country.
crazy.
Yeah.
I know.
So it's weird that
deep down inside, it's not too surprising, because there does seem to be a lot of crazy subculture in communities that are very oppressed. You can't look at that. You can't see that. You can't think that. You can't do that. And then, it's the things that people keep telling you can't have that you're curious about and that you want to try. So I guess deep down inside is not terribly surprising. Do you want to hear something funny? I was Googling while you were talking to see what the racial makeup of Utah was. It said, well, here's a funny thing. Of course, the AI generated response comes up first. Okay. It says white alone, 61.6, black alone, 12.4. It goes on. Hispanic, 18.7. And then I'm like, I wonder what it is in Ohio. I live in Ohio. And I clicked on Ohio. Oh, shoot. I clicked out of it. I clicked on Ohio. Exact same percentages. 61.6, 12.4, 18.7. I'm like, AI is the worst. All right. If anybody trusts it, don't look when you're Googling something. Do not look at the first response they give you ever. It is going to be inaccurate. It thinks Cody Brown is 24 years old, and it thinks that every state has the exact same racial makeup across the board. Oh, goodness. I don't know, but I clicked on something else and it said 76.8% white. That's pretty high.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not surprised, but it's a big state.
Yeah, which is fine. I'm not judging them for that. I'm just saying, in terms of her saying about diversity, and maybe she meant diversity in a whole nother way. She didn't specifically say. So maybe she is interpreting it as, I guess I'm thinking of it as if you're, although Janelle wasn't raised this way really, but if you're raised in a smaller subculture and all you know is that, then each person that you meet that's slightly different, whether it be they're involved in porn or they're, they're Asian or they're Hispanic or, they're slightly different in whatever way you might see. She might even think that different occupations are bizarre. That's not something that we normally go into in our culture. That could be what she's also viewing as diversity as well. So that's where she's coming from without her expanding it too. I don't know, but it is true that by them moving, they did. Their kids did get the opportunity to experience a lot of different diversity, including different religions. In terms of their kids going to school, they had a bunch of friends that obviously were not AUB, and therefore were exposed to a whole bunch of different stuff when they were in Vegas. And I think it made all of the kids and the parents better people. I think that it opened up their minds a lot more. It made them realize people are people, no matter where you go, and that to branch out from the, I don't want to be mean about it, but kind of elitist thinking that like we have all the answers, we're right, and we're going to keep those secrets to ourselves, and everybody else in the world is incorrect because we have this special calling or whatnot, however they would refer to it as. I think that's when they started to realize like, wait, no, we really need to rethink everything we've been teaching our kids. Well, some of them did. Robyn never agreed to that, but some did agree that it was good. And the kids have admitted that too, that they believe they really enjoyed meeting different kinds of people when they were in Vegas. And they said that everything was very homogeneous when they were in their Lehigh, Utah area. And that they appreciated that. And they felt like it made them a lot more open-minded, and it gave Leon a platform to be comfortable coming out. I don't think that would have ever happened in Lehigh. I think Leon would be in a polygamous marriage right now, trying to avoid her husband. Their husband
making excuses.
Yeah,
I got a headache. Don't you want to see Barbara?
I had a headache again.
You need to go to the hospital. You have all these headaches you have.
There's got to be another way
they
we
only
can
come when you show up. Right? Maybe I'm allergic to you. Yeah. Well, I do think like my final point that I thought was interesting with regard to the chapter actually touches on something very similar. I think that there was a point. I know there was a point in the book where she talks about Janelle. She talks about like the power of the couch and being on the couch and being able to express themselves openly and honest about some of the things that were going on. And while they were doing that, they were able to sidestep a lot of the issues and problems they had historically had, because normally they would just let things go, let things ride, let things be, and just turn a blind eye to it, never talk about it, never address it when they have issues. But because of the show, they were given an opportunity where they were able to express themselves, their distrust, their dislikes, things that bothered them. And not only did they pull up the things that bothered them, but because there was a show, and shows are always looking for that hot moment, that viral moment, they were asked to really delve into those things that gave them issues, problems, or concerns. They were asked to actually elaborate on those problems, and because they did that, I think it created a more open and honest relationship between not only Cody and his wives, but it created a open relationship, more of an open relationship between all the adults, and even spanning out to all the kids, where they had an opportunity, because like as you mentioned when we first started, they were talking to the kids, and when they weren't, with regard to going to that church youth group, and Maddie expressed her opinion, and all of a sudden Cody said, well, your opinion don't match my opinion, so we're done with this conversation for now until you get your senses and come back and agree with me. And they just kind of overshot it. It gave them the opportunity to be able to voice their opinion, and they did it from such a platform and such a stage and with such a big microphone that the parents had to address what they were saying, and they couldn't just kind of sweep it under the rug or ignore it. So I think the show did them that huge solid, especially the power of that couch. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. No, and then I got distracted because I'm reading the chat. But, and to speak to the chat situation too, they're kind of going over, and that's why I got drawn into it. As we sit here and snark about all of this and laugh about the different things, they're all just saying, they're all sharing situations where traumas that happened in their lives and how great it is to come to like these lives and hear us just snark and laugh and joke about it. And so it kind of warmed my heart to like read how people are like, yeah, I went through this trauma and I went through this trauma, but it's so great to come here and just let it all out and let it go. And that makes it warms my heart. It makes me happy because that's really what this is all about, right? We're supposed to just be here having a good time. Your channel, I think, is very much like mine in that my goal is not to just be mean and to be negative out there, you know, because I mean, that would be an easy take. That's the low hanging fruit because Cody and Robyn are so bad. But if you can't laugh at it, then it's, in my opinion, not entertainment anymore. Now it's just, let's just all be mean to somebody. Like, let's just all be bullies together. And that's not nearly as fun. But to just have little digs here and there and to laugh at the ridiculousness of all of this, that everybody appreciates that and that they look forward to coming as a way to let go and release and have a smile. Makes me happy. You do a good job, James.
Well, you right there. You doing it too.
Yes, we're doing it together.
Myself.
Sunday night, must see YouTube.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, I think that's also an important part of it too, is that at the end of the day, like I've always taken the position that, you know, you should not be stressed out going to YouTube and watching YouTube videos. Like if you stressed out watching YouTube videos or even Facebook, like that's part of the reason why I don't go. I bounce on the Facebook every now and again, but a lot of my previous pages on Facebook, I don't even go to anymore because of that reason. Like if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about like a disagreement or a discussion I'm having on Facebook and I'm not even on Facebook, there's a problem. And it's not moving my life forward at all. And half the times you're arguing with people. And I even apply that to some of the things that I see in the Brown family, where Cody will present certain things to the family and he'll say what he wants to say. And it's just like on Facebook where he has his script and the things that he wants to say. And that's all he wants to talk about is his part of it. But he doesn't want to accept additional information or different perspectives. He only wants to see the world the way he wants to see the world. And there's a futility in trying to engage in those kinds of conversations. And it's a futility that I refuse to participate in anymore. And because frankly, like you were saying, if you come to YouTube and you can't laugh, you can't joke, you can't have a good time, and you can't relax and kind of forget your issues and problems, and this is only one more problem, then this probably isn't a good place.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, I think that there are people that just feed off of that in the world, and there's channels for them, you know, and so by all means, but I can't personally understand it or grasp it because life is full of enough anxiety and all that. And so I started my channel because I was so angry at the television.
Right.
I got to get it out. My husband's just like, what? Like, he's the only one I got to talk to. I'm an empty nester now. And I don't know anybody else that watches the show. So I'm like, I'm just going to put it out there because I just need to talk to somebody. If nobody watches this, it doesn't even matter to me. Because at least I can verbalize and say, this is insane.
Right. Well, you know, and I think that's the crazy part too, is that at the end of the day, I think there's a part of every YouTuber, especially anybody who does reaction channels on like any type of reality show or whatever, is that you have a feeling that like I can't be the only person who sees this. Like I can't be the only one who thinks that this is insane that somebody would do this, and there has to be other people. And you come to YouTube and like with the community we formed or the community that are participating in the chat, which I appreciate you guys, especially being positive and fun and having a good time and keeping everything moving. Like other folks get together and like-minded people are like, yeah, this is nuts. You aren't crazy. This is crazy, you know. So I appreciate that. So you guys are helping to keep me sane.
And there's a camaraderie in there where you can go, okay, all right, I am normal.
Right.
That's not normal.
Right.
I'm okay. Or as crazy as my life is right now, crazier, kind of like when you said before, and as bad as it is, it could be worse. Well, it's like as crazy
Right.
and dysfunctional as you think your family is, we've got sister wives.
Right. Holy crap. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So we can talk about it and laugh about it and poke fun at whatever it is that they choose to put on the channel for us to be entertained by, and then continue that entertainment by discussing it amongst ourselves, and having a good
Mhm.
time with it. Yeah. And that being said, going back to what you were talking about when I started getting distracted on the chat, the best parts are those couch interviews. The Sister Wives would have been gone well before had they not had those amazing couch interviews where the producers were good enough that they were able to pry out the true
Mhm.
opinions that these women and Cody truly had about situations and each other, and allow it to bounce off of each other. And then that's what fed the rest of the show, because now that was out there and they knew it. So now that's affecting how they're
Right.
interacting with each other going forward. And thus made for good television, but also allowed them to not live under this cloak of charity where they are
Right.
not going to be sharing anything that they truly feel about anyone. And we're just going to put on a facade that we're all just a happy family and live in that misery amongst each other. And now they had to go deep and hit rock bottom before they came back up again, sadly at the end. But often we do in our lives that it
Right.
takes a turn for the worse and gets really bad before it can get better again. So in the long run, I think the move to Vegas ended up being a positive for them. These couch interviews where they were forced to speak to each other and speak their truth to each other was better for them in the long run, in the very end. And it was all better for TLC too in the long run.
Right. Right. And I think that that's also kind of the thing too, is that one, I think that in order for you to make room for the new, you have to clean out the old. You have to clean out the things that are bad for you in order for you to make room for the things that are good for you. And in that spirit, I think that there's a point where you could look at the situation that these ladies found themselves in. And I appreciate this. I know it was hard. I know it was difficult. I know it was very painful for everybody involved. However, could you imagine a life where you spend 30, 40, 50 years with somebody and you never once voice your opinion, your thoughts, or your perspective on issues that affect your entire family? And so, in essence, because you've never expressed yourself, whether it's your fault, their fault, the fault of the community, society, or just your family in general, dysfunctional family in general, because you've never expressed that, you are literally laying in bed next to a stranger because neither one of you have taken the opportunity to truly expose yourself and be in the presence of that other person completely naked, unarmed, and in complete revelatory uh, presentment to where they can actually see who you are. You always keep up that shield. You always keep up that cloak. You always try to make everything as manageable and as fair and as comfortable as possible. And by you doing that, you deny who you are. And by you denying who you are, they never get to know who you are. So you spend 40, 50 years with somebody who is a relative stranger. And the ironic part is that after 50 years, you think that you have a certain level of loyalty from this person, only to realize that you don't, because ultimately they're not loyal to you because they don't know you. You know what I mean? So how am I going to be loyal to somebody I have no idea who they really are? And that's the weird part about it. So I think that the couch, the one, I guess, metaphorical lesson that everybody can learn is that honesty is so critical in relationships, and having that couch like experience to where you can go to somebody you're in a relationship with and be open and honest about what's going on, what your challenges are, what upsets you, what they did to piss you off. You know what I mean? Just that basic thing is a true blessing in a relationship because it helps you not only to get past certain issues, but it also gives you the outlet to where you can be who you are and you can reveal who you are so that they can love the whole you and not just the you that's presented to them in a beautiful, tight little package that they can accept. You know?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that they had two things working against them. One, the way they were raised and how they were taught to keep sweet and keep it all secret and make it look good. And we're
Right.
trying to promote polygamy, so we have to put the best foot forward at all times. But two, Cody shows every sign of truly being a narcissist. And that's not the kind of person that is willing to listen to constructive criticism and all that too. So I think that they also learned through the years, it serves us no good to speak the truth with him. All he's going to do is either get angry or get defensive, because he's not going to take accountability, and he's not going to see it the way we see it. So the women were really stuck in that situation. Luckily, the couch interviews forced them to break out a little bit. I don't think they ever would have without the show. I really don't.
Right. You know what? And it's full circle. I enjoy the cyclical nature of most conversations, but one of the things that sticks out to me is that something we discussed earlier with regard to the presentation of the kids and their freedom and ability to be able to cite and state their opinions.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a point where when you are able to confront people who have differing opinions, it challenges your opinion and where your position, and makes, not only do you question it, but it either solidifies it or makes you say, you know what, I got to take this back to the shop, put it up on the stands and work on, pop the hood and start working on it. But there's also that point where, even with Cody, if he's only looking at things on how it benefits him, then the couch challenges the wives to be who they are. And you giving it, like I was saying with the kids, teaching your kids that freedom and giving them that experience to where they get to exercise that freedom on being able to say no or participate in something and having that actual choice. I think that in some of these smaller religions, these smaller communities, a lot of the people, not only the ladies, but even some of the men, are never taught to question or challenge things that are, and present or agree or disagree with issues and problems that are difficult for the family, those difficult conversations. They're never taught that they have a right to have that disagreement or say to their husband, no, this is a move we shouldn't make to Las Vegas in the middle of the school year because it's going to mess our kids up. And if you want to move, you can move by yourself, but I'm not messing our kids up. Like that would be something that they have to, in a weird way, you have to learn that freedom and experience that freedom. And I think that without that couch experience, I don't necessarily see where they had that ability. Like they could disagree with Cody, but when push comes down to shove, your disagreements, how far did they actually get? When you said what you had to say, how much weight did it actually have? I don't want to move to Vegas. That doesn't really mean a lot when you're packing your bags and you moving to Vegas.
Right.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going nowhere as you're packing your stuff and loading it into the car. Like,
yeah.
That's not freedom,
Yeah. Yeah. I think in the end, the couch interviews ended up being better therapy than Nancy.
Yeah.
Nancy wasn't all that she was cracked up to be, I don't think, in my opinion. And I might be wrong. I'm not a licensed therapist. There seemed to be a lot of talk around and imagery and stuff that I just don't think went anywhere with that family. I didn't see them making any progress. And I saw a lot of pushback from the family there. But the couch interviews were an opportunity for whatever reason, they believed they had to answer those questions. And so they really let their guard down. Or, James, probably they really wanted to answer the question. So they all handled it like, well, the producer asked me. So here we go.
Oh, well,
yeah,
we need the money. Guess I got to do what I got to do. Well, I think that you made an excellent point, too, because I hadn't considered, like, with Nurse Nancy, Nancy, but with Nancy, the therapist, like at the end of the day, there was one point where Cody came in, like I think you had even mentioned it earlier, where Cody came in and said he was talking to Meri, and they were having a discussion. He was like, "Look, I'm not here to talk about me. We're not talking about me. So essentially, what he was telling Nancy was, I came here to this therapy session, which is supposed to be couples therapy, where we're going to repair our relationship between me and Meri. I came here so that you can tag in and help me to bully Meri. And in my mind, if I was sitting there, and especially if I was paying somebody to help me with my relationship, there's no way I'm paying. I'm not paying for that. I'm not paying to get bullied. Or if something is my fault and that, or not fault, but if something I'm doing is hurting another person, I'm unaware of it, and you're letting me know, and maybe I don't feel good about it, that's one thing. But if I'm saying I'm going to sit here and be open and vulnerable, and the person I'm in therapy with directly says, I'm going to close down, and I am not going to take responsibility for anything that's said. And the only conversation I'm going to participate in is the conversation where we expressly say that everything that's wrong in our relationship is James's fault. There's no way I'm participating in that conversation. Yeah. As opposed to when you're sitting on the couch in that, I'll close that thought out. With that situation, Meri doesn't have a voice, because her voice is only going to be met with Cody's condemnation, and you're going to have the therapist, Nancy, turn around and either tell you that what you're saying is wrong because she wants to keep Cody in the chair, or she's going to agree with Cody, in which case you're not getting anything out of it and your voice is muted. Whereas on the couch, I get a voice. He can say whatever he wants to say, but I also get to say whatever I want to say. And we're getting equal time. So there's a leveling that happens on the couch that I think existed that helps, that maybe it didn't help the family ultimately, but it helped the individuals in the family so that they could find themselves. And eventually, I hope that they will find happiness in themselves because they were able to discover who they were and what they wanted out of the relationship. Yeah. And out of these relationships.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the couch interviews eventually evolved to almost like individual couch interviews, and that continued with them and was even better, because I think they shared a lot more when they didn't have the other ones there. COVID kind of precipitated we're going to just have one person at a time, but then the lack of relationships and the turmoil that there was in the family kept it going, where it was just one-on-one. And because of that, I think it turned into more of a therapy, especially in the end of the season, and the talk back, tell all, whatever all they're calling it. Now, those were opportunities for them to really let their hair down. And I think because they had over the years, they know when they go into that at the end that the other ones are all sharing everything on their mind. So they're like, I might as well lay it out on the table too. Is it 100% out there? No, but more than you see throughout the entire season is usually what you get at the very end. Could be so much more if Suki could learn how to do a follow-up question. I mean, when she learns that skill, then we're going to have some great tell-alls at the end. Until that point, the first questions that the producers write are pretty good. They're all right. I mean, some of them are really dumb. There were some ridiculous questions. They were such a waste of time. I almost turned it off, but I was afraid I'd miss a question afterwards.
Right.
Who's your idol, or who do you have? Who do you like? Who care? I could care less which sister wife liked which actor. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? I don't care. Please tell me.
Unless they're going to meet them that weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Is something going to happen? No. Okay. Then let's table that and talk about your relationships with each other. Can we dive a little bit? How about finances? Right. One question, maybe in the 3-part or 4-part or however long it was. Could we get one question on finances? Please, I'm begging you. I prefer about 30 to 50, but I'll just take one. So I had a lot of issues with it. But that being said, they did share more there than they even did on the show. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I understand there are people who take the position that they want them all on the couch together because that way they can be a little more combative. The only thing that I think with that is that them all being on the couch together discourages some of the more quiet folks from coming out. Quiet and less confrontational wives from actually saying the things that they need to say, because they don't want to sit there and argue and go back and forth. Like, for instance, when Christine was getting yelled at by Cody, Like she didn't flip out and start going back and forth with him about like the knife in the kidneys and all that stuff. She just sat there quiet and let him say whatever he wanted to say, and then he walked off. And she didn't say anything after that. And so I think there's a stifling that happens if you have them all on the couch. In addition, there's a lot of what I noticed, especially in the earlier seasons when they were all on the couches together. As soon as they get an uncomfortable question, one of the other wives or even Cody would chime in and they would distract away from the question. And a lot of times the actual question was never answered because they would throw out something and they would, Cody would throw out an off comment. And then Robyn would follow up on that off comment and say something, maybe crack a joke or, joke that didn't really land. But either way, it was a distraction. And then once it was distracted away from that, the host would oftentimes follow up with the distraction as opposed to pressing the original question. And I think that by having a one-on-ones, you eliminate some of that and you put yourselves in a situation where because they don't know what the other person is saying, when they get there, they're like, oh, if they threw me under the bus, then I'm going to come in, teeth bared and knives out, and I'm going after them because I'm not going to get embarrassed. So you have that element as well. So I mean, I can appreciate everybody's perspective on it.
I 100% agree. But I wonder, and this is going off of something Kathy put in there too. I wonder if back in the day, the cloak of charity existed. They did cover each other a lot of the times. I wonder now if we did these one-on-ones current day, and then at the very end, because I like the one-on-one because I do feel like they're more transparent when they don't have somebody else looking at them. But Kathy made a point. If they were all on the couch, those lies Robyn was telling about never taking the test and all that, I think now they would come out and confront each other and say, no, you remember? It may not be aggressive, but I think Christine would have said, oh, no, you took it. Remember we were at this place and we were with Nancy and you were sitting in that one chair and, let me set the stage for you. Oh, we filmed it, I believe. Didn't we film it, TLC? Wasn't that filmed? So I feel like there could be some good opportunities to keep Robyn from lying in her. I don't know. And we would have gotten to the truth of the horse ring Meri Christine situation if you could bring them together at the very end and go, okay, we're just going to put it on the table. We had a conversation that we were all talking about. Because it seems, I might be wrong, but it seems to me that they each had two turns on the couch. You could kind of see the order that they were in based on if somebody could reference an answer somebody did before. So I was like writing on a sheet of paper, okay, that one referenced that. So that means she went before her. And, so I was putting it all down, but it did seem like they rotated through it again so that the first person had an opportunity to answer questions from the ones before, but they only cycled through twice with everybody. So people, did their thing, went and had lunch, had a break, whatever. And then they brought them back in the afternoon and they did it all again the second time. So if they're going to be there anyway and hanging out, it would be kind of fun if the last segment was, we're bringing them all on the couch again, as we did back in the old days, but nobody's protecting anybody anymore. Last season wouldn't have been great because Meri and Robyn would have still been protecting each other. But I don't know if that would hold true this season if they did it at the very end. I feel like the separation is starting to happen without any concrete details. I feel like Meri is moved on.
Yeah, well, because the only reason I would have pause with that is because both Cody and Robyn have exercised the power of the walkout. Since they started doing the one-on-ones. And with that, if for instance, with the whole question of whether they did the test, Robyn would gently try to push it as, well, you're just picking on me. I don't recall taking the test, and just because I don't remember taking it and whatever, you're just being nasty to me, and I think that's you putting that on me. And then she'll just try to dismiss it as everybody's being.
You be a victim?
Yeah, she definitely played a victim. Then you have Meri with the ring. she would just jump up and run off. And she would yell a few times, say some nasty stuff, and then she would run off the stage. Cody, if they ever came at Cody and said, let's talk about such and such, or you said this, like was it season 17? You told Meri, you told Christine and Janelle that Christine, Janelle, and Robyn that you could possibly get back with Meri. And Christine, you cried. And Cody, Christine said she never cried. She said she never got upset. She said that she would never do that. What is your response, Cody? And Cody would just say, I'm not talking about that. I think that this is going to be it's not going to be productive. And this is a conversation I don't want to have. Next question. And if they try to press it, he would then say, that's it, I'm leaving. And he would jump up and run off. Like, I think that I totally see him running off the stage. Because I think he was going to run off the stage when they pressed him a couple times, even in season 17. When they, well, what about your relationship with Robyn? He did that looking at the watch stuff. Like, he was ready to walk off then.
I heard somebody say once, too, that they thought, I'd have to go back and watch that again after I heard this, but somebody I recently heard say that they thought he had like an Apple Watch and that Robyn was texting him because they didn't have their phones out there. So she was like, do not answer that question. And so he was like, she's like, do we not have time? And he's like, yeah, I'm just not going to answer that. So I'm like, all fits, but I'd have to look at it again to see if it looked like it was an Apple Watch or if it looked like it was a regular watch.
But I tell you what, how disturbing would it be if you're doing your interview? Cody's a grown ass man. He's doing his interview, and you have your wife off stage, kind of doing like the stage mom bit where she's texting you and telling you what to answer. Like, that would be so creepy. Like, that's super cringe. That's super cringe. I would, if you don't want to talk about her, then stand on your own 2 feet. Like, I get it. You don't want to talk about her. You don't want to throw her under the bus. Your relationship is too special. And to be honest with you, at that point, Cody was kind of down to one wife. So, I'd probably be hesitant about messing that up. So, I'm not talking about I probably wouldn't talk about it either. I'm already down to one wife. Like, you have me blow that relationship up? No, I'm not answering the question.
That's right. That's
I'm
true.
losing everything.
That's true.
I mean, now the 25% of my wives.
Yes. I would have loved to have had a camera on Robyn while Cody was on there. She had to have been sweating bullets. Anytime he opens his mouth, she is just scared to death. That whole season 18, she was just like, enough, to the point that she would just cover it. Like, enough. You're not speaking anymore. Stop. So when she couldn't be out there and he was by himself on that stage answering questions, I am sure she was just freaking. I bet any money she recommended to the producers that the two of them go together, since they're the only two still left together, as opposed to one-on-one. Right. And they were like, no, we'll separate you two. We'll let Cody speak for himself.
And it never really occurred to me until you just said that would be the equivalent. Like, that's the trophy wife equivalent, I guess, the polygamous equivalent of trophy wife. Like, that Robyn essentially and fundamentally Robyn doesn't respect Cody's intellect or his ability. I won't say she doesn't respect his intellect, but she certainly doesn't respect his ability to answer questions in a proper or acceptable form or fashion. You know what I mean? That's part of the whole shut up, let me answer. She doesn't mind if it's like fun stuff or if it's, the silly, oh, my wives or my boss or, that kind of stuff. She doesn't mind that. She loves that. But the minute they ask a real question, then all of a sudden, shut up, Cody, you can't be trusted to give the answer. And if anything, if Cody ever really went to that, that would not only hurt his feelings, but that actually might cause a problem between the two of them.
That's true. His ego is big. If he sense that right now it happens. I think he's completely unaware of it because he's so smitten by her. And he doesn't realize and see how she wears the pants unless he's staying on social media and he's watching it and he's aware that after the last season, people are like, he's whipped. He doesn't have a show. She's controlling him. She's pulling all the strings. She's telling him what to say. She's covering his mouth, for crying out loud, to tell him to stop talking.
Right.
He doesn't have any control or power anymore. That would be the one thing that would like cause friction in their marriage, where he like his pride is too big to deal with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that would hurt. I mean, to be honest with you, that would hurt anybody. I think that would hurt anybody's feelings. If you were if you were out and somebody asked something, like you're standing there with your husband or your significant other, and somebody asks a question and you go to answer it, and they tell you to be quiet because your answers are embarrassing. Like that would, like, what do you mean my answers are embarrassing? Like, oh, you're finna get embarrassed. Like, you're gonna be really embarrassed. Let me get wound up and start saying what I think. That would just be terrible. So, but to somebody who is so vested in their own image and the way that they're perceived by the public, that could be devastating. That could be devastating. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And she's come out and said, Cody, the whole speaking Cody, and when we were in that whole conversation, she came right out and said, Cody doesn't filter sometimes what he's saying. He just says what he's thinking, and and it just comes out of his mouth. And there were two things that struck me in that. One, that she's saying he has the maturity of about a 5 to 7 year old who just spews out whatever they haven't learned yet, what's appropriate to say, what's not appropriate to say, when to hold your tongue, when not to hold your tongue. So that's great. So she's saying he has the maturity level when it comes to speaking of a kindergartner. But also she's basically saying everything that comes out of his mouth is true. He doesn't have the ability to filter himself. So all those nasty, mean, horrible things that he said about his wives and his kids, he means it all. Which is just, like, she did not do him a service at all by saying he just says what's on his mind all the time. And most of us will like think through it, and he just doesn't. And I'm like, that's a terrible thing to say based on what he's been saying. That's not a supportive statement whatsoever. Do you know what you just said, Robyn? Come on.
Well, because she's doing he's just being honest because he's an honest person, and honesty is good. But I think that there's because even kind of circling back to the whole couch perspective, like Cody is living on, like that dude lives on the couch, so he's given his perspective. And there is a thing, I've said it before here, one of my personal pet peeves in dealing with people is there's always that one person that says, I can say these offensive things and you shouldn't be offended by me saying them because I'm just being honest. And I'm just telling it like it is. And what I found is I'm not offended by your honesty. I'm offended by the fact that you'll be honest with me, but when I'm honest with you, what I'm saying is offensive. So we're going to be honest, and we have the kind of relationship where you can say whatever comes across your mind to me, then I should be able to retort and or say whatever comes across my mind to you. Like, I should be brutally honest with you just as you're brutally honest with me. And what I see with this particular situation is Cody will come out and he's brutally honest with everything he says. He says what he wants, and everybody's just supposed to deal with it because it's the truth, his truth. But when they come out and they say their truth, all of a sudden they're being disagreeable. They're not looking out for the family. They're not considering the big picture. Yeah, you understand what I mean? And that's one of the things that I struggle with as I watch Cody talk about these things, and even Robyn's description of he's just being honest. If he's being honest, then the wives should be just as honest. They should be able to meet that energy with the same or exact energy where he's at. So if you want to be honest with me, then we can be honest. But let's just put it this way: I'm not going to be the only one crying. We're going to be crying together.
Yeah, and that's never going to happen because you can't be honest with Cody. That's for sure.
No.
And he'll never be able to make that connection. I mean, somebody could
Right.
come right out and explain to him that connection, and 2 seconds later he'll forget it and still think he's in the right. And you can't say anything negative about him, but he can be honest when it comes to other people. It's Cody's world of nonsensical communication.
Right. Well, you know what it is, because it's just the basic. When I say what I say, and when I say it, it's good. It's net good. When you say it, something about me, your observations or whatever, it's net bad. So therefore, if you say anything to me, you're wrong for saying it. You're wrong for feeling that way. Your opinion of it is wrong. You have a wrong-headed mentality. But when I say it, because this is something I observe, then it's just me being honest. You should accept that because it's the true good. You know. So I don't know. I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Yeah. And the classic example of that is him being so upset that the wives would talk about him behind his back. And he called it shit talking all the time. And yet we see over and over again when he talks to one wife about another wife. Like, well, what do you call that talking?
Right. Yeah, that was the first time I actually saw it was him talking when they were supposed to be going to Vegas. And he asked Janelle for the money to get a trailer. Because he had to get approval from her because apparently she had all the money. So he asked her to rent the trailer and she refused to rent the trailer because she bought into the whole, we got to run for the hills and we got to hide and we can't let nobody know. And if we have a trailer out front, obviously we're moving. So that'd be a big old stupid. And he got mad. So he ran over to Christine and started talking about Janelle. And that was on that was what, season 2? And so like the second episode. And then by season 18, everybody's crap talking him and how unacceptable it is. And I can't believe that they were talking this stuff. And they were using me as a soundboard to talk bad about each other. And I never appreciated it. And that's why they were bad sister wives.
Yeah.
You know.
You're reading my mind. That's the other video that I made was literally that scene and talking about the discrepancy in the Cody not understanding himself or not understanding what a hypocrite he is.
Right.
All the way back then, he was talking about his wives, and yet now, 16 years later, he's upset that somebody's saying something negative about him. You've been doing it your whole life on all these seasons. Right. It's crazy.
Now all of a sudden, it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's, as far as the book is concerned, that's all I had. Any final thoughts on the book?
No, at the very end, I love the line where not the very end, but near the end, I just put in there where I thought this was funny. How she said she was talking kind of about Cody and her having a rough patch and then working it out. And she said Cody was spread thin between 4 separate homes and more time because we were all looking for work. And I just wrote in the margins, Robyn's still looking.
right. That elusive job application.
Yeah. All the way back in season 1, she's looking for work. Still looking.
Right. That's
just
amazing.
like her nanny is only there for the time being because she moved to find a substitute teacher job. Still looking for a substitute teacher job. Hasn't found it yet. How many years later? That's so funny.
It says a lot. Which says a lot.
Yeah.
But that's all I have.
That's all I have too. Wow,
so
look at the time. We've gone a long time.
I know. I gotta go get some water. Yeah. But do you have anything popping this week? Or you trying to get some stuff out?
I will get some stuff out. That is my promise to everybody. There will be before. Look at me make a promise here. Before my live on Thursday night, I will have a video out on my channel, Senior Perspective, and I will have the review of Welcome to Plathville on my reality TV breakdown channel as well. So those 2 will definitely be out. And then I have another sister wife one in the can that will come out shortly after my live. So it's coming, people. It's coming. It's recorded. Now it all just needs to be edited.
There you go.
How about you?
For me, I just have the sister lives tomorrow. I have to do some stuff I have to work on with my car. I was telling I was talking to Jenny earlier about it. Yeah, I got to do some stuff around the house. I got some honeydews to do. but I have to commit to releasing some videos, getting some videos out, get back on the Dean where I'm releasing the shorter content. I know some of you guys have been asking for it. I will be putting that out. I'm not gonna go and be as verbose as the promise of this week because I know I've been promising and I feel bad, but I've been dropping it off. But yeah, I will be. I have to recommit to doing it, and I will get more stuff out. But that's all I have. So without further ado, that's my take. I'm James. This has been my take on reality with
Jenny from Senior Perspective.
There you go. And I want you guys all to have a great night. Oh, and before I forget, because I try to be good about it, but I want to make sure I don't forget. I want to make sure we thank the moderators. I have Lizzie B in the house. I don't think Rochelle J is here. I think J Baby is on. I think she came in a little late, but those are my two.
Lynn Skinner and Lori Carrad were both here on my side.
Awesome.
Yes.
And of course, we had the most awesome, fantastical, wonderfulest A for awesomeness chat ever. Yeah. So I want to thank you guys for keeping it positive and keeping it fun down there because both while Jenny and I are talking, which is why I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate it so much because it gives me the opportunity to be able to check out the chat and see what's going on and check in with the chat folks. And I see that it's always positive. So I really appreciate you guys keeping the chat positive because that's a huge bonus for me.
You're all so good. You had me distracted today.
Yeah. There's some good ones. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Some of the stuff I get so tied up with everything going on. But yeah, you guys do rock some good comments, and we see a lot of them. Even if I don't get to post them all up on the screen.
Yeah.
But
it's
definitely worth
it. If you're watching this after it's been live, make sure you click on the button because it defaults off into top chat. And sometimes you can't see the chat until you hit live chat. At least that's how it is when mine go live for whatever reason. So maybe this one will too. But do that. That way you will get the chat and see it. And it's totally worth as you're listening to it, reading through the chat at the same time, because there's some good zingers in there.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But thank you guys all so much for hanging out with us. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And we will see you next week where we will be discussing Christine and her perspective of celebrity. So I think that's going to be a good one. And of course, that following week, we're going to follow up with Robyn. And I know that's going to be either really good or it's just going to be complete bullcrap. So,
James, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And I think I'm going to miss that one because I'll be driving back from Nashville. My husband and I are visiting my daughter and her husband in Nashville that weekend.
Awesome.
I miss another Robyn. It's like the universe is against me.
Robyn put the money in. She put it on. We'll see what happens. Who knows?
Yeah, I'll double check the dates, but I'm pretty sure next Sunday I'll still be here, and it's the one after that I will be gone.
That's all right. Oh, and I did start seeing some notices that they were talking about doing the release for Sister Wives in August, September. Obviously, we're in August. We're damn near August. So I'm thinking it might be closer to September. So I'll keep an eye out for that. And when that no news drops, of course, I'll drop it and let everybody know what's what.
Yes.
So,
good.
And if you guys hear anything, please let me know.
Likewise.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for coming out. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being cool. Thanks to the moderators, the chat. Appreciate you all. That's my take on reality. I'm James. I'm out. And
I'm Jenny, and I'm out.
All right, there you go. And that's all that needs to be said. Have a good night, y'all.
Bye-bye.